Did you know? A cutscene in the Broken Steel expansion of Fallout 3 featured an underground subway called the Presidential Metro. However, the train that players ride isn't a true train. Using the game's creation kit, players can see that the train car is a piece of equipment rigged on an NPC's head. The NPC runs through the metro at a high speed, achieving the same effect as a train. The series has other secrets that can't be found in-game. Two of Fallout New Vegas's unused NPCs are a merchant named Tom Dooley and Kevin Hargrove. Kevin would hire out his Brahmin Betsy as a companion to the player. Betsy would have been useless in combat, but have a high carrying capacity, making her a useful pack mule. However, if the player slept while traveling with Betsy, she would return to Kevin's farm and any items she was carrying would appear in Tom's inventory. Though cut from the final game, the NPC Rotface will still reference the dubious nature of Tom's goods. New Vegas also contains two odd unused enemies. The first is a massive fire-breathing gecko named Gojira, who would terrorize Camp McCarran, and second is a radioactive tumbleweed inspired by stories of tumbleweeds absorbing radiation. The only way to give tumbleweeds the radioactive status in-engine was to program them as enemies. However, this led to issues with the game's loading and rendering and had to be dropped. The perk In Shining Armor from New Vegas's Dead Money DLC is supposed to grant players a defensive bonus against energy weapons while wearing metallic armor or sunglasses. However, due to a coding error, the perk is unable to trigger, rendering it completely useless. An icon for a cut quest called 20 Leagues Under the Sea can be found in Fallout 4's data, and unused assets suggested would have involved the underwater Vault 120. Unused dialogue in one of the Institute's terminals indicates that the faction was somehow involved with the quest, while another shows Institute scientists beginning development on synthetic fish. Some NPCs in-game will mention a giant ghoul whale named Ol Peg that is never encountered, but may have been related to this cut quest. Several skeletons for similar giant whales can be found washed up on the shores of the island in Far Harbor, and other unused textures in Far Harbor suggest that the expansion once included giant armored squids. Fallout 3 was also planned to have a surgery minigame where players would have to manually cauterize their wounds while their characters screamed in pain. This was cut because it slowed the game's pacing down too much. There's a history of censorship in the Fallout franchise. It was possible to kill child characters in Fallouts 1 and 2, which gives the player the child killer reputation. However, it is impossible to kill children in the UK and German versions of the game, rendering the reputation inaccessible in those regions. The image representing the child killer title was changed during Fallout 2's development, but resurfaced in 2010 when artist Brian Menz included it in his portfolio. About the image, Menz said, "This image was unused and the only Vault Boy image to ever be cut from Fallout 2. How do you make an illustration of child killer and keep it from being offensive? Anyway, for some reason, I thought this was the least offensive way to do it." Additionally, gore was removed from the German version of Fallout 3. However, it was possible for Germans to simply buy the uncut Austrian version of Fallout 3, which included a full German translation. The player can become addicted to several chemicals throughout the series, though each game before Fallout 4 was censored in Germany to remove addiction-related imagery. The UK versions of the early Fallout games changed the word drug and addiction to chem and craving. Chem later became the series' standard word for drug. Morphine was originally going to be an item in Fallout 3, but the Australian Classification Board insisted that Bethesda remove all references to real-world drugs. As a result, Bethesda renamed morphine Med-X, a change that stuck across all regions. Interestingly, the editor ID for Med-X is still morphine in the final release of Fallout 3. The Fat Man mini-nuke launcher in the 3D Fallout games is a reference to one of the atomic bombs dropped in Japan during World War II. The Japanese versions of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas renamed the weapon Nuka Launcher to avoid controversy. Interestingly, the Little Boy modification for the Fat Man in New Vegas, which was also named after one of the atomic bombs, did not have its name changed in Japan. The Fallout series is well known for its Easter eggs and references to pop culture. Pickman's Gallery and Dunwich Borer's Quarry from Fallout 4 and the Dunwich Building from Fallout 3 are named after the stories by horror author H.P. Lovecraft, Pickman's Model, and the Dunwich Horror. A skeleton can be found behind a brick wall next to wine bottles labeled Amontillado in the Minuteman's Castle, an allusion to the Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. The player can encounter several pop culture references if they take the Wild Wasteland trait in New Vegas. One of the more interesting is the body of a man named Johnny next to a table with 5 ace cards on it. This is a nod to the Zyborn clock, a cancelled video game project by members of the Something Awful forums. The game's convoluted storyline and main character Johnny 5 Aces gained notoriety and became a popular in-joke on the forum. The player's butler Codsworth recognizes several of the names players give their character and will speak them aloud. These include a variety of normal names, swears, and several references to pop culture like Snake Plissken, Marty McFly, Indiana Jones, and Rick Deckard. Fallout 4's Diamond City features a noodle shop run by a robot named Takahashi who asks his customers, "何にしますか?" a line identical to a Japanese noodle chef in the film Blade Runner. In the Japanese dub of the game, Takashi was voiced by Resident Evil series creator Shinji Mikami. Mikami also created the studio Tango Gameworks, which is owned by Bethesda parent company ZeniMax Media. The series has several other interesting facts about its voice talent. At the beginning of Fallout 3, the player briefly controls their character as a baby. The baby voices were provided by Jake Howard, the son of game director Todd Howard. Other children in the game were voiced by the children of producer Luke Lafferty and lead designer Emil Pagliarulo. New Vegas's radio DJ Mr. New Vegas was inspired by and voiced by entertainer Wayne Newton, also known as Mr. Las Vegas. Actress Linda Carter plays the character Magnolia in Fallout 4 and performs several songs that Carter wrote herself for the role. These 5 songs are notable, as the rest of the game's soundtrack is licensed tracks, besides its ambient music. According to voice casting and production company Blindlight, the first actor considered for the role of President John Henry Eden in Fallout 3 was former US President Bill Clinton, though he ultimately turned down the role. In a 2009 episode of the Ellen DeGeneres talk show, actor Matthew Perry gave Ellen an Xbox 360 with a copy of Fallout 3 that he'd signed. Perry said, "I played this video game so often that I injured my hand so severely that I had to go to a hand doctor and get injections. I'm not affiliated with this game at all. I just love it, but I signed it so it looks like I created it." In response, Bethesda and Obsidian reached out to Perry and offered him the role of Benny in Fallout New Vegas. Interestingly, Perry's Friends co-star Courtney Cox briefly worked at Bethesda in the 1980s, though it's unknown what position she filled. Bethesda aren't afraid to reference their own properties either. Prior to the release of Fallout 3, Bethesda commissioned the creators of Penny Arcade to make a tie-in comic to promote the game. Titled One Man and a Crate of Puppets, the unnamed main character was a survivor from Vault 77 who engaged in violent exploits alongside a hand puppet. A Vault 77 jumpsuit can be found in Fallout 3 alongside a holotape that describes the comic's main character. Another reference is the chime that sounds after the Fat Man nuclear launcher is fired. This sound is actually a recording of the lunchroom bell at the Bethesda offices. While creating a character in Fallout New Vegas, the player is asked to interpret a series of Rorschach inkblot tests. Some fans joked that one of the inkblots resembled two bears high-fiving, and even modded the game to include this as a possible answer. The game's Honest Hearts expansion included a minor NPC named Two Bears High-Fiving as a nod to the joke. During a trailer for Fallout 4's creation kit, Bethesda previewed a suit of special horse-themed armor as a self-deprecating jab at the poorly received horse armor DLC for Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Fallout 4's development took over 6 years, and began before Bethesda had even completed their expansions for Fallout 3. This was longer than the 4 years it took to make Fallout 3 and the 18 months Obsidian Entertainment were given to make Fallout New Vegas. Boston was made the location for the game due to the numerous references to it in Fallout 3. This included a quest called The Replicated Man, which involves a synth that escaped the Boston area with the help of the Railroad. Both the Railroad and the synths would become integral parts of Fallout 4's storyline. Members of Bethesda's team were spotted scouting Boston as early as 2012, and went to great lengths accurately recreating parts of the area. This included the famous red seat in the bleachers of Fenway Park, and in-universe versions of real buildings like MIT, Walden Pond, and the Old State House. Another location players can visit is called the Prost Bar. The bar appears to be based on the bar in the sitcom Cheers. The bar's location on the map lines up with the real-world Bull and Finch pub, now known as Cheers Beacon Hill, which was used in the sitcom for the bar's exterior shots. Funnily enough, Prost is also the German word for cheers. Given its location north of Concord, the fictional Sanctuary Hills settlement appears to be located in what is today the Minuteman National Historical Park. Using this information and the area of the bomb crater in the glowing sea, it's possible to roughly determine the location of the nuclear explosion from the game's intro sequence. Comparing the in-game map with a real-world map, the bomb appears to have detonated south of modern-day Framingham, Massachusetts. There's one small reference to this that's easy to miss in the game. A terminal entry in an abandoned factory reads, "They must have missed the city with the big one. Framingham's gone from what little I heard on the radio before it went quiet." Prior to the release of Fallout 4, a fan named Gator Machete Jr. attempted to pre-order a copy of the game by mailing Bethesda a box of 2,240 bottle caps, a tongue-in-cheek reference to the currency used in the Fallout games. Bethesda's community manager contacted Gator Machete Jr. to say that they would honor their pre-order and send him a copy of the game, but only because they were the first person to pre-order with bottle caps. In 2016, a Reddit user named Nuge47 made a post expressing their appreciation for the Fallout series. They explained how playing Fallout Fallout 4 helped them get through a bad time in their life following the passing of their father. After Nuge 47's older brother also passed away, Bethesda mailed them a care package with a handwritten letter to let them know that they plan to memorialize their brother as an NPC in the game's upcoming DLC. Bethesda stayed true to their word, which led to the inclusion of the NPC Evan in Fallout 4's Nuka World expansion.
Did you know the title of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion was teased in the 1998 adventure game The Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard? This was 4 years before the release of Morrowind and 7.5 years before Oblivion. There's also a few references to Redguard in Oblivion. The main character of Redguard, Cyrus, is referenced by first mate Malvolus, who sings a song about him.
Sail on, my Cyrus, sail on.
One of the blades protecting Martin at Cloud Ruler Temple is also named Cyrus. The plot of Oblivion was further teased in Morrowind's Tribunal expansion. The character Eno Ramari talks about the Gates of Oblivion opening and the invasion of the Daedra. Oblivion was first revealed in 2004, but the public didn't get a good look at the game until E3 the following year. Oblivion's E3 2005 demo showed a new system called Radiant AI, which gave non-playable characters general goals. How these goals were achieved was determined by the AI and various in-game values. The system had problems when it was first implemented, as there were no real rules for the characters to follow, only goals to achieve. This caused many problems, including questlines being broken. One example is that a character important to the Dark Brotherhood questline would be found dead. The character was also a skooma dealer, and were actually being killed by other characters who wanted their fix of skooma. As a result, many of the behaviors of Radiant AI had to be toned down in the final release. Other changes were made in development. A PSP version was planned for release around April 2007, but was scrapped. According to official PlayStation magazine, it lacked the free-roaming gameplay the series was known for, and felt more like a dungeon romp. Although the English version of Oblivion was well produced, other language versions didn't quite get the same treatment. The Spanish translation of the game in particular was poorly made. The Spanish localization team mistook the verb to train, as in to practice, with the vehicle, train, like a choo-choo train. This led to some strange and confusing dialogue about land vehicles in a world that had none. The game has a small nod to the first title in the series, The Elder Scrolls Arena. During the Rosethorn Cache, the player will have to solve the riddle, "Two bodies I have, though both joined in one, the more I stand still, the quicker I run." The very same riddle appeared in Elder Scrolls Arena, with the solution being Hourglass. Posters at the Imperial City Arena also reference the box art for Elder Scrolls Arena. Interestingly, Oblivion's Arena is a remnant of a much larger questline that was cut during development. The team originally planned to have an arena in each of Cyrodiil's major cities. By cutting out these other arenas, they removed around 800 lines of dialogue. Two of the game's shops, The Main Ingredient and Three Brothers, get their names from real-world restaurants. Both restaurants are located in Maryland, the home of Bethesda Game Studios. As another real-world reference, the Council of the Dark Brotherhood, the Black Hand, gets its name from a Serbian secret society first established in 1911. Alternatively known as Unification or Death, the group gained widespread notoriety in 1914. During that year, several of its members carried out a successful assassination attempt on Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This single act of violence is widely considered the catalyst for the First World War. There's a bridge near Breville that has the remains of a dead troll beneath it. The scene is reminiscent of Three Billy Goats Gruff, which tells the story of three goats trying to pass a gluttonous troll. The goats speak to the troll one at a time, and each recommends that the troll eats the next goat, as they'd make a bigger and better meal. The last goat that approaches the troll is big enough to overpower it, and knocks it into the water below. If the player examines the troll, they'll find a poorly written note on its body that reads, "Me worst troll ever. Nobody pay bridge toll. Me not scary enough. Me get drunk and kill self. Troll drown." The Elder Scrolls games are no strangers to referencing other popular series. During the quest Unfriendly Competition, the player encounters a book known as the Macabre Manifest. This text contains a catalogue of the recently perished, one of whom is named Oford Gabings. Among his possessions were items such as a travel cloak with silver and green leaf fastener, an enchanted short sword with inlaid writing, a leather-bound travel journal, and a gold ring with inscription, which is cursed. This collection of items is strikingly similar to several important items belonging to Frodo Baggins from The Lord of the Rings. Oford Gabings is also an anagram of Frodo Baggins. Another reference to The Lord of the Rings lies in the Dark Brotherhood quest, A Knife in the Dark, which is named after the 11th chapter of the first book. Aside from the name, the goal of the quest is to murder a man in his sleep at an inn. These circumstances mirror the events of the chapter of the same name, where the main characters are almost murdered as they sleep at an inn. Oblivion even references other games. A glass shield simply named Mirror Shield can be found in Oblivion. It's believed this is a reference to the Mirror Shield from the Legend of Zelda series, as both have the ability to reflect magic. There's also another video game reference in a quest at Battlehorn Castle. In the quest, the player finds that the castle's lord, Cain, was resurrected by a necromancer after falling in a battle. This story is very similar to the Legacy of Cain series, where a nobleman named Cain is resurrected by the necromancer Mortanius. In Oblivion's Shivering Isles expansion, there seems to be a reference to the video game show Consolvania. In Consolvania's Elder Scrolls episode, Rab states that he used telekinesis to put shoes on the rooftops of buildings. In the Shivering Isles, there's a pair of shoes next to a remote manipulation scroll on the roof of the Museum of Oddities. In June 2008, a point-and-click adventure game titled Limbo of the Lost released on PC. Later that month, Game Plasma posted an article showing the environments in Limbo of the Lost were identical to areas in Oblivion. This included places like Castle Skingrad, Five Claws Lodge, and the Office of Imperial Commerce. After the article was published, the gaming community found the developers of Limbo of the Lost had plagiarized assets from at least 15 other games. And this wasn't the only time Oblivion's assets were used in other media. In early 2013, North Korea used Oblivion's main theme in an anti-American propaganda video. The music played in the background as images of American soldiers and a video of President Obama was shown surrounded by flames.
Hello and welcome to Easter Egg Hunting, a show that dissects your favorite games looking for hidden secrets and Easter eggs. We're going to try our hardest to show you any and all Easter eggs that we can find in any game, and we'll even be throwing in a bit of trivia as well. This time we'll be covering the Fallout series, more specifically Fallout 1, 2, 3, and Fallout New Vegas. Because of the immense size of these games and the amount of references in them, we'll only be covering the most notable Easter eggs and references. And as the games are fairly non-linear, we'll also be covering the content in alphabetical order this time, rather than in chronological order. So let's not waste any time and jump straight into Fallout 1 Easter eggs. For the first of our many movie references, in the film A Boy and His Dog, Vic refers to his telepathic dog known as Blood as dog meat. It's possible that the dog in the Fallout series, also called dog meat, is a reference to this. Not to mention, the pre-made character Albert Cole may have gotten his name from the same film. Blood, the pre-mentioned psychic-powered dog, would often call the boy Albert, even though that wasn't his real name.
One does not say ain't Albert, simply say I'm not kidding.
Fine, dog meat. And stop calling me Albert.
A Boy and His Dog itself was also shown at a post-apocalyptic film festival, which was held to promote the release of Fallout 3. Then, to jump to the very end of the game, the final 21st level has the title Last Best Hope of Humanity in the Vault Dweller's Survival Guide. This phrase has its origin in Abraham Lincoln's closing remarks to his 1862 annual message to Congress, "We shall nobly save, or meanly lose, the last best hope of Earth." For the first of a few novel references, when a paladin asks the Vault Dweller what they have to report, the player responds with, "All quiet on the Western Front." This is a reference to All Quiet on the Western Front, a novel by German World War I veteran Erich Maria Remarque. Then, in the hub's Old Town district, the thugs guarding the Brotherhood Initiate prisoner in a specific quest will attack you on sight, and one of them will sometimes say, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Just like the recurring line of the Joker in Tim Burton's Batman.
Ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Whenever traveling from one place to another throughout the game, it's possible to encounter strange events while wandering the wasteland. These include the appearance of a blue British police box. As the Vault Dweller approaches it, a light on the top will begin to spin and the box will fade away. This is a reference, of course, to the TARDIS from the UK TV series Doctor Who, a time-traveling spaceship that takes on the form of an old British police box. If in the game you find yourself in a skirmish, however, you may see the critical hit message, "The attack crushes the temple, good night Gracie." And this is a reference to the George Burns and Gracie Allen show, and the Good Night Gracie legend.
Be careful, the life you save may be your own.
That's right. Say good night, Gracie.
Good night.
Good night.
The Fallout series as a whole never tried too hard to hide its influential roots, that mostly being Mad Max the Road Warrior. The most obvious signs of this influence come in the dog partnership the main character has in their respective series and the design of the leather jacket seen in the first 3 Fallout games. Mad Max itself was actually influenced by another source, that being the post-apocalyptic short stories A Boy and His Dog and Egg Sucker written by Harlan Ellison. For something a little bit weirder, the design for Vault Boy was actually inspired by rich Uncle Pennybags from the board game Monopoly. For a much more obscure reference, however, in the hub you can meet a lady known as Mrs. Stapleton, the librarian. Her surname is shared with that of a character found in a skit performed by Monty Python's Flying Circus, in which a Mr. Stapleton runs a bookstore performing shady business with the Secret Service dentists.
Ha ha ha! Drop that gun, Stapleton! Okay, Stapleton, this is it. Where's Mahoney hidden the fillings?
Going back to near the end of the game, the line, "I can't believe those bastards finally did it, damn them all to hell," in Captain Maxon's diary is strikingly similar to Charlton Heston's famous outcry,
"Finally, really did it. You blew it up! Damn you all to hell!"
from the final scene of the Planet of the Apes. But then, right back at the very beginning of the game, at the entrance to Vault 13, it's possible to come across a corpse. When examining a corpse, a message will appear that reads, "You see Ed. Ed's dead." It's believed that this may well be a reference to a line of dialogue found in the 1994 film Pulp Fiction, in which Bruce Willis's character is asked,
"Whose chopper is this?"
Zed's.
When asked who Zed is, he states,
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
Later on down the road, when you find the leader of the Thieves Guild, Loxley, he himself is a reference to one of the names given to the famous outlaw Robin Hood, Robin of Loxley. Loxley's fake British accent and anachronistic clothing are part of the reference. Even before booting up the game itself though, this little Easter egg can be found at the opening cinematic, featuring a TV showing various news clips in black and white. As it zooms out, we are shown the brand of television is in fact Radiation King. This is a reference to season 6 episode 10 of The Simpsons called Grandpa vs. Sexual Inadequacy, in which we see Homer Simpson's childhood television set is created by the same company. The name is in reference to the fact that early tube-powered TV sets were found to be poorly shielded and thus emitted levels of X-ray radiation that broke modern safety standards. Later on, Radiation King products could be found throughout the entire Fallout series. Back in the hub, look for Deputy Kenny in the police station, and if he should die in battle, or like me, you kill him outright, a message will appear in the message box reading, "They killed Kenny, those bastards." This is a reference to the running joke of Kenny dying in numerous episodes of the popular TV series South Park, in response to which Kyle and Stan will say the exact same line. Still in the hub, when the Vault Dweller is trying to blackmail Iguana Bob, one of the dialogue options is to say, "Prime Choice Select is made of people. It's made of people." And this is in reference to another Charlton Heston movie line from the film Soylent Green.
You gotta tell him, Silent Green is people!
The Brotherhood soldiers who accompany you to the mutant military base will sometimes say, "I've come to kick ass and chew bubblegum and I'm all out of bubblegum." A line from the 1988 movie They Live.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Also, when the player enters the scum pit in Junktown and talks to one of the Skulls gangers, one of the available dialogue options is, "I came here to kick ass and chew gum." I think you can guess the rest. Not only is this phrase from They Live, but it's also one of the main catchphrases of Duke Nukem.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
When next playing Fallout 1 or even 2, keep an eye out for many of the buildings in the game, for there are some posters that are of Maynard from Tool. The poster is part of the album art from the band's first album, Undertow, in 1993. Now, you wouldn't think a peasant would have anything majorly important to say, hence this Easter egg is bound to go unnoticed by a few people. But back in the hub yet again, a peasant in the hub is likely to say, "Let's go play Global Thermal Nuclear War," a reference to the film War Games.
Shall we play a game?
Oh, how about Global Thermonuclear War?
A psyker makes a reference to the Wonderful Wizard of Oz while pacing in their cell in the Los Angeles Vault beneath the cathedral. The dialogue should read, "There is no place like home, no place like home, no place like home," while pacing back and forth, repeated over and over again, just like in the source material.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
for our last bit of Fallout 1 egg hunting that has no reference to any media and instead the team itself, there is a character in the Boneyard called Chris Avallone. This is actually a strange inside joke from programmer and designer Jesse Heinig about how Chris Avallone himself neither has a past nor a future. And finally, in both Fallout 1 and 2, if you were to enable large icons in Windows, the icons for Fallout and Fallout 2 executables would turn into Tim Kane's head, who was one of the programmers and main designers for Fallout. We've now reached part 2 of our massive journey through the secrets and surprises throughout the Fallout series, and massive is indeed the word since we're now at Fallout 2, an absolutely giant game, and one that messed up the original plan a little bit. We were planning on showing off the trivia and Easter eggs in alphabetical context like before in Fallout 1, but after nearly 30 hours of gameplay recorded in only 2 days, I ended up discovering some eggs that didn't exist, others that appeared at completely random places, some that popped up not written down, and many other stressful occurrences that left me having to decide to write them up as chronological as I could be to the game's plot. Please keep in mind there will be more parts dedicated to Fallout 2 in the future since the game is so massive, and I definitely may have missed a few things here or there ready to cover in future episodes. So with that being said, and without further ado, let's get on with it. To start off with, primitives in the Wasteland taunt the player sometimes by saying, "Fear is the mind killer." This phrase comes from the Bene Gesserit litany against fear from Dune. Then in Klamath Canyon, the crashed vertibird repair robot says, "I can't let you do that, Dave," and "I'm sorry, Dave." A computer on the first level of Vault 8 will also say, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that," and these are all references to HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey.
"I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that."
The robot will also occasionally say "Nanu Nanu," a traditional greeting on the planet of Ork, Mork's home planet in the TV sitcom Mork and Mindy.
Nanu! Nanu!
Not to mention, it's also possible for the robot to say "Number 5 is alive" while attacking you. Those were Johnny Five's favourite words in the movie Short Circuit.
Number 5 is alive.
Finally, it's possible for the robot to also say "Gort, Klaatu Barada Niktu." This is a reference to the 1951 sci-fi film The Day the Earth Stood Still, in which the phrase was originally
Gort, Klaatu Barada Niktu.
Moving on to the Den, random jet addicts will sometimes say, "I have the power." This is probably a reference to the Masters of the Universe cartoon series, as it's the catchphrase of He-Man. Other addicts within the Den, and sometimes Shadow Who Walks, will also sometimes say, "Be very, very quiet, I'm hunting wabbits," a reference to the famous Elmer Fudd quote from Looney Tunes. Also, for another Looney Tunes tidbit, in one of her floats, Dorothy asked the Chosen One if they happen to have an Illudium Q38 space modulator. This is a reference to the cartoon series Marvin the Martian, where the titular character often attempts to destroy Earth using
the Illudium Q36 explosive space modulator.
In the Den as well, Flick says in some dialogue, "What you talking about? You think I'm a f***ing stupid perler? Some dumb filio di putana? You think I'm some kind of clown? Am I here to amuse you? Is that it?" This is a reference to the film Goodfellas, specifically the scene where Joe Pesci is talking to Ray Liotta.
I'm funny how? I mean funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
A reference to the Pink Panther is made in the Den as well, where Tyler runs a gang and asks who sent you if you approach him. In a rare response, the Chosen One may reply with, "The Pink Panther." Across the street from Tyler, if the player becomes a slaver in the Den, very occasionally the slave victims will yell, "Run for it, Marty." This is a reference to the 1985 film Back to the Future.
They found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
Run for it, Marty!
Who?
Moving on to the well in the center of the town Modoc, getting down with a rope lets you see that there are several bags of coins scattered around the floor of it. Picking up one makes the Chosen One say, "This is my dream, my wish, and I'm taking it back. I'm taking them all back." This is an identical quote from The Goonies, spoken by the character Mouth, where he and his friends find themselves at the bottom of a wishing well.
This was my dream, my wish. So I'm taking it back. Taking them all back.
Moving on to Vault City, if you recruit John Cassidy, a reference is made to Final Fantasy VII in his floating combat dialogues, which says, "Wish I had a limit break." Also, if John Cassidy is your companion, sometimes he asks, "I wonder if Texas survived the war." This is a line from the film Red Dawn. When talking to the Doctor in Vault City about receiving the Dermal Impact Assault enhancement much later on in the game, he will explain about the hit to charisma by saying, "All the curves you got are gonna become right angles." The Chosen One can then reply that they've always wanted to look like Crichton, referencing the mechanoid Crichton from the British sci-fi sitcom Red Dwarf. When the Chosen One talks to Thomas More in Vault City, they can end the conversation by saying, "Go sell crazy somewhere else, we're all stocked up here." This is a reference to Jack Nicholson's character Melvin in the film As Good As It Gets.
Sell crazy someplace else, we're all stocked up here.
A reference to Austin Powers is made by one of the men in one of the bathrooms in Vault City when he occasionally says,
"Who does number 2 work for?"
On the first floor of the inside of the vault inside Vault City, the computers will randomly say sometimes, "Strange game, the only winning move is not to play." This is a reference to the NORAD Supercomputer Artificial Intelligence, WOPR, standing for War Operation Plan Response, in the film War Games, who says this line having learnt the concept of mutual assured destruction.
Strange game, the only winning move is not to play.
Still in that same vault, the maintenance man at the bottom of it looking after the main giant computer constantly sings the song Maybe by the Ink Spots over and over again, not only a reference to the group themselves, but also a callback to the most memorable song used in Fallout 1. Heading off to Gecko, in the bar, the bartender Woos will ask the Chosen One to buy a card game called Tragic the Garnering. This is a reference, or parody, of Magic the Gathering. The names of certain cards in the decks are also similar to the real card game, such as Vox Mubi being similar to Mox Ruby, Black Dahlia being similar to Black Lotus, and Earths being similar to Lands. When talking to the mutant outside the non-functioning reactor in Gecko's junkyard, he starts saying a speech from the film Wall Street.
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Also, his name is Gordon of Gecko. Michael Douglas's character in the film was Gordon Gecko. The glowing ones who inhabit Gecko reference E.T. the extraterrestrial sometimes by extending a glowing finger out at the Chosen One whilst droning, "Phone home."
E.T. phone home.
Funnily enough, a large intelligent mole rat with a lust to take over the world and an enlarged head called Brain lives in Gecko, who can be reached through a manhole in the junkyard. This is a reference to Pinky and the Brain. A reference to the film The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is also made in the Raiders Cave in between Vault City and Broken Hills, where there are 3 sets of dog tags that match the names of the 3 main characters from the film, Angel Eyes, Tuco and Blondie. Now jumping into the pre-mentioned Broken Hills, there is a talking spore plant called Seymour, which is a reference to Little Shop of Horrors, and the talking plant Audrey 2, who is fed by a man named Seymour. An intelligent scorpion is also present in Broken Hills. After many different tests against the scorpion, you can frustrate it by being just as smart as it is, leaving you no choice but to kill it. If you loot the scorpion afterwards, one of the things on him is a pair of spectacles. Later on, if these spectacles are taken and given to Renesco in New Reno, he will begrudgingly give thanks and offer a reward. One of the dialogue options is to reply, "Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me, but until that day, accept these glasses as a gift on my daughter's wedding day." This is a reference to The Godfather.
Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me. But until that day, accept this justice as a gift on my daughter's wedding day.
In the retirement house in Broken Hills, there is a ghoul who sings the first 2 verses of the song Tired of Waiting for You by the Kings. One of the old ghouls in the same place will also occasionally say a reference to a very famous Abe Simpson quote.
I'm cold and there are wolves after me.
The mutant Elmo references the song One Bourbon, One Scotch, One Beer when complaining on how he got into the Broken Hills jail. Then, inside the Broken Hills mine, the character called Chuck Stodgers is a reference to the protagonist of Armageddon 2419 AD, Buck Rogers, and how both characters were trapped behind rocks and preserved in time. When getting Mickey's help to retrieve Typhon's dirty favor useless treasure from the town well, once it is retrieved, Mickey will be stuck in it forever, with humorous floats persisting throughout the game. One of them, oh my god, Morlocks, is an allusion to the Morlocks of the Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Jumping out of Broken Hills and into Golgotha Graveyard, one of the gravestones has the name of Ray Muzica, who is one of the co-founders of BioWare. Then, as we enter New Reno, you'll need to find out where the jet drug is coming from, a young man named Myron in another place called The Stables, who you can then persuade to come with you on your journey back into Reno. A pimp can also sometimes say, if you have Myron as your companion in New Reno, can she suck a garden hose through a golf ball? Hell yes. This is a reference to the first scene of Full Metal Jacket with the drill instructor.
Boy,
Oh, I'll bet you could suck a golf ball through a garden hose.
Also, if the Chosen One has no reputation, is a slaver, or with Sullock, the prostitutes will occasionally comment, "Me so horny," another reference to the hooker scene in the same movie.
Me so horny. Me so horny.
Prostitutes in New Reno solicit and call female characters G.I. Jane, the codename of the combat medic of the G.I. Joe team from the G.I. Joe franchise. Casino patrons and Reno townsfolk expressed concern that Mr. Roboto scanned them, referencing the 1982 Styx song of the same name. Also, during the recruitment of Myron, one of the dialogue options is at the end of your conversation, "It's 106 miles to Arroyo, we got a full fusion cell, half a pack of Radaway, it's midnight, and I'm wearing a 50-year-old Vault 13 jumpsuit. Let's hit it." This is a reference to Dan Aykroyd's famous line in The Blues Brothers.
It's 106 miles to Chicago, we got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes, it's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
A reference to Sugar Ray's song Fly is made by some of the junkies that are high around New Reno, with one of their float dialogue options being them singing, "I just want to fly, put your arms around me baby, put your arms around me baby." A reference to Chrysler Automotive is made with Chrysler's Motors, the maker of the drivable car in the game, most notably in nearly a dozen overhead NPC lines in the Chop Shop, where the car ends up after it's stolen in New Reno. The model of the car is referred to as the Chrysler's Highwayman, a reference to the real car model, the Chrysler Highwayman. The mechanics in the Chop Shop of New Reno can also remark, "Go Grease Lightning Go," a lyric from the song Grease Lightning from the musical Grease, as well as the chorus from the theme song of the movie. Back in New Reno again, after the Chosen One becomes a porn star, many of the residents will comment about the pornographic films the Chosen One was in. Great Balls for Hire is one of them, and a spoof on the story of Great Balls of Fire. They may also comment on Good Will Humping, a spoof on the story of Good Will Hunting. And finally, a prostitute will sometimes say to you, "You are great in Pocahontas," being an obvious spoof of Pocahontas. We've now reached part 3 of our journey through the Fallout series, and we're still on Fallout 2, and this will be the last video covering that game. There are so many references in Fallout 2 that after 40 hours total of just searching through the game and trying to complete it to find all of them, there may be 1 or 2 tiny insignificant references we might have missed in this video, and for that we can only apologize, but we need to get on to Fallout 3, and there are just too many in Fallout 2 to count. So with that being said, let's get ready to finish off Fallout 2. Starting off again in New Reno to talk about lots of boxing and fighting references, the boxers will state Adrian, Adrian, and Cut Me Mick, as well as Stuart Little talking about eating lightning and crapping thunder in references to Rocky.
You're gonna eat lightning, and you're gonna crap thunder.
Before boxers head into the ring, Stuart Little also mentions the song Eye of the Tiger, which is the theme song of Rocky 3. Also worth mentioning is that there are several name choices for the prizefighter reputation title after winning a load of fights, and they are direct references to Rocky, such as Balboa, Apollo, Drago, and even Clubber Lang. Still in New Reno, there are many people who reference the boxer in the game known as Mike the Masticator and how much he likes ears, going as far as to bite them off. The characters Mike the Masticator and Evan Holyfeld, who are fought in the New Reno boxing matches, are references to Mike Tyson and the boxer whose ear he bit off, Evander Holyfield. Stuart Little also asked the Chosen One if they pity the fool, the catchphrase of Mr. T.
No, I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool.
When the Chosen One becomes a prizefighter, both Little Jesus Mordino and Ramirez will say, "Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee." That's you right there. This plays off Muhammad Ali saying, "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee." Going back to picking a prizefighter nickname, when Stuart Little talks to you about it, there are also some choices that reference the NES game Punch-Out, such as Glass Joe and Bald Bull. If the Chosen One is female and annoys Stuart Little though, he compares her to Lara Croft from the Tomb Raider franchise. Jumping away from fighting and into other subjects, a pornographic film named Top Bun is mentioned by Vicky Goldman much later into the game. This is a reference and spoof of the film Top Gun. New Reno prostitutes also reference the British girl group Spice Girls when they solicit their services, saying that they are either filthy, homely, slutty, old, or dirty spice. Much like in other Fallout games, when wearing power armor, you get some very different responses from NPCs, some of which even break the fourth wall. When wearing power armor around the casino, it will cause patrons to jokingly ask if it turns into a jet and flies around, a direct reference to Starscream of the Transformers. Not to mention, you can even get a Commando reference from a quote taken straight from the Arnold Schwarzenegger film if you look around the boxing area.
I eat green berets for breakfast.
Both the Desperado and Shark Club pit bosses will remark on Marcus the super mutant if he's your companion, saying that they don't care if he's one of the X-Men and that mutants have to stay outside, referencing the comic book franchise centered around superhero mutants, X-Men. Also, when becoming a made man with any crime family, Scarface is among the titles that the Chosen One can be known as, referencing the film of the same name. Back in the Den though, some addicts will even say hello to my little friend, which is a quote from the very same film.
Say hello to my little friend!
If the Chosen One has low intelligence and is trying to gain an audience with Louis Salvatore, one line the character can say to the guard is "Oog make mission statement." This is an exact quote from the 13th of October 1994 issue of the comic series Dilbert, where Dogbert is commenting on how the people in charge are usually out of touch and don't know what they're doing. When the Chosen One has either no reputation or the prize fighter, made man, and or slaver reputations, and if the companions Robo-Brain, Marcus, or Sulik are active, junkies will sometimes repeat Robert De Niro's famous line, "You talking to me? You talking to me?" from the film Taxi Driver.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
A reference to Lenny Small from Of Mice and Men and his obsession with rabbits is made in the character dialogue lines of players with, again, low intelligence when speaking to Miss Kitty in New Reno. In New Reno casinos, again while in power armor, one of the casino patrons may say, "You're looking for your brother Robbie? You know, the robot?" Ah, never mind. This is a reference to Forbidden Planet. Also, in Vault City's vault on the first floor, the computers will randomly say, "Danger, Will Robinson." Yet another reference.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson!
An addict will also sometimes say "Snoochie Boochies." This is a reference to Jason Mewes' character Jay in the Jay and Silent Bob duo from the View Ask universe.
Kneel before sun! Snitchy boochies!
A reference to the Silence of the Lambs is then made during the quest where you have to retrieve Chip's spleen from a doctor. He'll comment about how he's going to eat it later with fava beans and a Chianti, to which the Chosen One then asks if it's liver he should be eating it with.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
A medical holodisc of Dr. H. Lecter is also present in the Sierra Depot. Holiday, Henry, and Johnson, the three mid-game doctors, are a reference to Doc Holliday, real name John Henry Holliday, a gunfighter, gambler, and dentist of the Wild West. Doc Holliday matches the unusual nickname, Dr. Henry matches the physical description, and Doc Johnson matches the profession, all while each three of their names references his real name. Going back near at the beginning of the game, asking the Dunton brothers about their meat jerky will make them say, "It's made with 11 herbs and spices and it's finger-licking good," referencing the KFC slogan used from 1956 to 2006. There's also a holodisc in the footlocker of the first tent on the left to the surface of the Mariposa military base that says the head of the Enclave excavation team was Colonel Sanders. If Dogmeat is attacked by the player while not a companion, a man named Mel will appear sometimes and retaliate. This is a reference to Mel Gibson's lead role in the Mad Max series. After completing the game as well, many NPCs will also sing a little of Tina Turner's Beyond Thunderdome, which was the theme to the Mad Max film of the same name, after destroying the oil rig. The town of Broken Hills is also a reference to the town of Broken Hill that The Road Warrior was filmed in. In the special encounter, The Bridge, the Bridgekeeper can be met. He will ask 3 questions and his final question is then counter-questioned by the Chosen One. He then dies like the Chosen One would have done if they answered the question incorrectly. This is a reference to a famous scene from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Who approaches the bridge of death must answer me these questions 3. What is your name? What is your quest? What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
What do you mean? An African or European swallow?
I don't know that.
Another special encounter, the Holy Hand Grenade, references the Holy Grail again, with King Arthur's knights, 4 knights in regular power armor, who inquire as to the whereabouts of the Holy Hand Grenade. In Klamath Canyon, the crashed vertibird robot that guards the vertibird wreckage says, "None shall pass," a nod to the Black Knight, again from the Holy Grail.
None shall pass.
While still in Klamath, go and talk to Jenny in the bathhouse, and one of the Chosen One's available options to say is, "Actually, I could use a bit of a rub, nudge nudge, wink wink," a reference to the candid photography sketch in Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Your wife interested in, photography, eh? Photographs, eh? Snap snap, grin grin, wink wink, nudge nudge, say no more.
A much more subtle Monty Python reference is also prevalent in Vault City's vault on the first floor, where the computers will randomly say "ping" in all caps, much like how the important machines in the Meaning of Life's hospital scene also say to sound more important.
What's that for?
That's the machine that goes ping.
The band 9 Inch Nails is referenced by a vagrant on the tanker when saying the line, "In fact, I would rather die than give you control." The mild delivery of this line is a contrast to the way it is sung in Head Like a Hole. Once the Chosen One completes the game, New Reno townsfolk will also announce that this game was brought to you by the letter Z. Not only does this break the fourth wall, but it also references Sesame Street's messages of a scene being sponsored by a letter of the alphabet. Throughout the game, there are many boxes of cheesy poofs in various areas referencing South Park. Also, when offering T-Ray sex for batteries, his line, "I just gave you sweet lovin' 5 minutes ago, you trying to kill me?" is a reference to Chef's line from the episode Weight Gain 4000. When going to explore the ghost farm, when dropping in on the Slags accidentally, there is a reference to the Borg when they ask you, "Are you resisting?" And one of the responses is, "No, I know resistance is futile." Also at the ghost farm, the leader of the Slags is called Vegir. In Star Trek, there is an alien intelligence that found an Earth explorer, Voyager, that they referred to as V'ger, because the letters Oya on it were covered over with dirt. To go back to the robot in Klamath Canyon again, he will also occasionally say, "V'ger, V'ger." There is a special encounter with a crashed shuttle from the USS Torres, which in itself might be a reference to Torres from Star Trek Voyager, with dead red shirts and a hypo. Captain Picard, the dead Enclave officer hiding in the military base, is also a reference to Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the USS Enterprise in Star Trek The Next Generation. There are several references made to the Star Wars franchise in Fallout 2. In Klamath, if Whiskey Bob is asked about the Den, he says, "You will not find a greater hive of scum and villainy." Now, where did I hear that? Obi-Wan first spoke this sentence in Star Wars, describing the Mos Eisley spaceport.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
When wearing power armor in New Reno, a porn star at the Golden Globe will remark,
"Too short for a stormtrooper."
This line was originally spoken by Princess Leia in A New Hope. Another notable mention are when other random prostitutes remark about how you look like Darth Vader, spelt in an exaggerated fashion. Defeating the Enclave prompts a whole new set of float dialogue from Reno citizens, including, "I feel a great disturbance, as if 100 evil bastards on an oil derrick suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced. Strange." This is another variation of an Obi-Wan line, this time when the Death Star destroys Alderaan.
I felt a great disturbance in the Force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
When on the final stretch of the game, going over to see Granite, in his dialogue he offhandedly mentions,
"These aren't the droids we're looking for,"
which is an approximation of a line said by stormtroopers under the influence of Obi-Wan's Jedi mind trick in A New Hope. On the lower right-hand side of the map screen, there are stamps of TK421 and L5AA23 on the Vault-Tec Maps logo. Specifically TK421 being Luke's call sign when dressed as a stormtrooper, and L5AA23 referencing the location of Leia's cell on the Death Star, Level 5 Detention Block AA23. There's a reference to the Unwashed Village community that's one of the oldest Fallout communities in existence. The Unwashed villagers present in a special encounter are some of the oldest and most respected members of the Unwashed village, though the situation has changed over time. The spammer they are fighting is the Grim Reaper, or Grim, a legendary spammer who plagued the Interplay forum for a long time as the arch nemesis of the UV. Several members have unique entries in Fallout 2, including Thrakazog in an entry in a Hobologist holodisc, and the Enlightened one in the New California Republic. The Unwashed village community still exists and thrives at unwashed.eu, combining both members old and new. Notable members include Buffy, Doombot, Panoply, Lurk, Ema, Iguana Eater, Night Owl, Shadow Dancer, Amish Commando, Alex and the Killer Bee, Hatchet Man, and Blue Cross. Much like in Fallout 1, there are several references made to the Wizard of Oz. In the NCR, New California Republic, there is a girl and a robot standing outside of a building. The girl's name is Dorothy, and her trusty robot who follows her everywhere is Toto. In the Tin Man special encounter, there is someone standing rigid and unmoving in power armor, saying repeatedly, "Oil can." When the Chosen One uses a nearby oil can on the figure's armor, the Tin Man walks away after gifting the Chosen One with a microfusion cell. If the player is wearing power armor again, for another Tin Man reference, a prostitute might sometimes say, "Look, Tin Man, if you want me to dress up as Dorothy or Toto, that's extra." After defeating the Enclave, Eldritch from his weapon shop will sing, "Ding dong, the Enclave's dead, the Enclave's dead." An altered form of the song the Munchkins sing when one of the Wicked Witches is killed by Dorothy's falling house. Description for the .44 revolver is the line spoken by Clint Eastwood at the end of the 1971 film Dirty Harry.
Being this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
An obvious reference to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is made with a special encounter with a dead carcass of a sperm whale and a broken houseplant, referencing the improbability drive of the ship, the Heart of Gold, that turns 2 nuclear missiles into a sperm whale and a bowl of petunias. To finish off with random dev team Easter eggs, the Chosen One's nephew standing by the well in Arroyo is called Fergus. This is likely a reference to Black Isle's founder, Fergus Orcart, the developer of Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. Many tombstones in Golgotha and the Den also mention the names of people in the Fallout 2 team, including lots of people from Jeremy Barnes to Chris Avellone. In New Reno, there is graffiti of developer names like T-Ray. Tremel Ray Isaac, also known as T-Ray, is an artist who worked on Fallout and was the lead artist of Fallout 2. Bishop's Men and Reno townsfolk will also remark that New Reno was designed by Chris Avellone and scripted by Tom French. Rumor has it they will marry soon. Right Teenagers mention New Reno's design as well, while adding on, Tom plays in a band and Chris plays with himself. Fluffers and New Reno prostitutes also mentioned that they were scripted by Tom French and remark that he has softer, gentle hands. Reno townsfolk and New Reno prostitutes remark that they miss Tim Kaine, who used to bake wonderful bread and then spank them like small children. The prostitutes will also sometimes mention that Chris Avellone and Tom French designed New Reno and that they are both sex gods, and that Tim Kaine is one of their regular customers. They will also remark on how many strippers were at Fergus Orcart's bachelor party. Finally, the addicts of the Den will question where Sasha is. This is a reference to Vince Donardo. Although he is one of Interplay's old producers, he did not work on Fallout or Fallout 2. It was a small tradition to have his dog Sasha somewhere in an Interplay game. Sasha is normally placed in the special thanks section or in some other place in most of the older manuals.
Did you know? Bethesda was approached to make a Game of Thrones RPG, but turned down the offer to focus on creating Skyrim. The team was asked to make the official games based on George R.R. Martin's fantasy novels. They were excited upon getting the offer, but ultimately decided to focus on their own fantasy worlds instead. When designing the world of Skyrim, Bethesda opted for a different approach to what they took with Oblivion. In particular, Skyrim's art director, Matt Carafano, considered the more surreal design of Skyrim's world a departure from Oblivion's generic representation of classic European fantasy. Skyrim's director, Todd Howard, expressed how the team desired to re-encapsulate the wonder of discovery found in Morrowind's game world. If they returned to the traditional fantasy themes found in the Elder Scrolls Arena and Daggerfall like they did with Oblivion, it would mean sacrificing the chance to make a world with a unique culture. Skyrim has other connections with Morrowind. The downloadable expansion for Skyrim, Dragonborn, contains many of the music tracks found in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. This seems fitting as Dragonborn is in Solstheim, which is in close proximity to Morrowind. After considering who should compose the music of Skyrim, Bethesda opted to bring back Jeremy Sewell to compose the game's music, as he'd also worked on Morrowind and Oblivion. He composed the game's main theme, Dragonborn. Dragonborn was recorded with a choir of over 30 people singing in the game's dragon language. Todd Howard wanted the theme for Skyrim to be similar to the Elder Scrolls theme, but sung by a massive choir of barbarians. This became a reality when the idea was passed by Sewell, who recorded the 30-man choir and layered the 3 separate recordings to create the effect of having 90 individual voices. The Elder Scrolls series has a history of making use of limited resources. In fact, just one team member was charged with designing every dungeon in Oblivion, and a small team of 8 people were tasked with designing Skyrim's 150 dungeons. The amount of follower NPCs also increased in Skyrim over Oblivion and Morrowind. One of these NPCs is Eric the Slayer. Eric the Slayer is named after Eric West, whose online alias was Imok the Slayer. Bethesda was so impressed with his knowledge of Oblivion that they gave him an in-depth tour of Bethesda Studios and decided to create a character based on Eric in Skyrim. Eric died of cancer in May of 2011 and never got to see the release of Skyrim. The tour of Bethesda's workplace was set up by the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which ultimately immortalized Eric in the land of Tamriel. Skyrim is known for its large amount of pop culture and other video game references, but its more interesting Easter eggs are the ones involving other Elder Scrolls games. One example of this is Sheogorath's dialogue in Skyrim. His dialogue may suggest that he's the hero of Kvatch, or, in other words, the main protagonist in Oblivion that became Sheogorath during the events of the Shivering Isles expansion. This idea is suggested by Sheogorath himself, first with his mention of having been at the Oblivion Crisis for that whole sordid affair. He also mentions butterflies, blood, a fox, a severed head, and cheese. The subtitles also show that there's a capital F in fox as if it's in reference to a name. These mentions are likely nods to the butterfly intro sequence in Shivering Isles, the Blood of the Daedra Divine's main quest, the leader of the Cyrodiil Thieves Guild, the Grey Fox, and the severed head of Matthew Bellamont's mother. The mention of cheese may be in reference to Sheogoras Daedric's shrine quest in Border Watch. In Skyrim's Dragonborn DLC, you can come across a wizard that casts a spell attempting to fly like a dragon, but winds up ultimately falling to his death. This is a reference to a Bosmer enchanter in Morrowind called Teriel. Teriel falls from the sky at the Bitter Coast near Cedonine after an experiment goes wrong. Some Skyrim references delve even further back in the Elder Scrolls timeline. At the Winking Skeever Inn in Solitude, the bard sometimes plays the melody heard in stores in the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall. Skyrim also has some fairly interesting cut content. One piece of unseen content in the game is an arena called the Windhelm Pit. The area can be viewed by entering the console commands COC Windhelm Pit Entrance and COC Windhelm Pit Exterior. Entering the Windhelm Pit spawns some Argonians, Nords, Dark Elves, and Imperial non-playable characters. They're all labeled Pit fans and are supposed to be spectators for the fights. It's believed that this Windhelm Pit was going to be similar to the arena in Oblivion, and that you would face off against animals and bandits. Dialogue attached to the pit suggests that you have been jailed there and forced to fight a bandit being targeted by the Dark Brotherhood, Elaine Defont. This was changed before the game's release, instead having you face off against Defont in a Dwemer ruin. There's also pit guards who are fully voiced, but they can't be viewed during normal gameplay. The game has other hidden spoken dialogue. If you use the set trace command to change a character into a child, it makes it possible to kill them. What's interesting is that children's deaths have voice audio attached. Additionally, if you use mods that allow you to kill the child character Braith, Lars Battleborn will approach you in Whiterun and thank you for killing her. His lines are fully voiced, suggesting you were originally going to be able to kill children in the game. The fact that these lines were also voiced suggests that this was likely cut later into the game's development. Something that seems to have been abandoned much earlier in development was using Charas as mounts for Falmer riders. This idea can be seen in pre-production art by Bethesda concept artist Adam Adamovich. Adamovich sadly passed away due to complications of lung cancer in February 2012. He never got to see the final version of the world he helped craft. Some of the voices of Skyrim have an interesting background. Charles Martinet, the voice behind several characters in the Mario series, also voices the dragon Parthenax.
And so perhaps your destiny will be fulfilled.
Skyrim also has some small details that are easily overlooked. For example, after a dragon has been defeated, the effect of its burning remains can be seen in the game's world map. Another detail is that the appearance of the Draugr is randomized and not gender-specific. This means that Draugr can spawn with a female body and a full beard.
Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. Skyrim was released back in November of 2011 and has amassed over 30 million sales over the years. However, despite its popularity, you might not know that the creators of Skyrim, Bethesda, opened a challenge for a willing fan to not only deliver a baby on the release date of Skyrim, but also to name the child Dovahkiin. On November 11th of 2011, the winners Megan and Eric Kellermeyer named their newborn son Dovahkiin Tom Kellermeyer. For this bizarre feat of fandom, the family received a Steam key for the entire Bethesda Softworks library, including all future releases. Prior to the birth, Megan explained why she entered the contest in a blog post, stating, "It is an awesome name, and yes, it comes with a fantastic prize. Now, my husband didn't know of the contest to start with. We conceived long before hearing of it, but it's been a tough year, and I wanted to do something special for my son."
Moving on with love that knows no bounds, let's talk about the Khajiit race in the very popular open-world RPG series, The Elder Scrolls. A book within the Elder Scrolls universe named The Real Berenzia contains a whole 10 volumes when it first appears in Daggerfall. Unfortunately, the book was reduced to just 5 volumes when it was carried over to Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. In the full Daggerfall version, a Khajiit named Theris and Queen Berenzia engage in some physical romance. This was unfortunate for Queen Berenzia, as just like real cats, the Khajiit race have barbs on their penis. Today we're looking at the third entry of the Elder Scrolls series, Morrowind. Located inside a shipwreck in the Sheogorath region, a book can be found called Captain's Guide to the Fishy Stick. While the book claims to be the definitive reference to fishy sticks in all of Tamriel, reading the book is impossible. As the game explains, the pages are so smeared with fishy stick sauce, it is impossible to read any of them. This book isn't simply a small joke, but is actually a reference. A tradition on the series' official forum, started by user Captain Eldred, was to welcome new members with a greeting, as well as an image of a pirate holding a giant fish stick. The image was taken from an advertisement for Captain Morgan's rum, replacing the bottle of rum with a giant fish stick. The game's developers decided to honor this tradition, including the book within the game. Captain Eldred's legacy would continue within the Elder Scrolls, appearing in Oblivion, Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls Online, and Elder Scrolls Legends. In Oblivion, Mike the Liar will proclaim, "Mike wishes he had a stick made out of fishies to give to you. Sadly, he does not." Though there appears to be no voice clip recorded. In Skyrim, during the player's approach to Sheogorath during the quest The Mind of Madness, he says,
"I'm busy doing the fish stick. It's a very delicate state of mind."
With the Elder Scrolls Online, the player is capable of cooking fishy sticks as a consumable food, as well as the default name of a Palomino horse being Fishy Stick. With the card game spin-off, Legends, when summoning the Artaeum Savant, he will say,
"What? Oh, sorry. I was busy doing the fish stick."
In Bethesda's later released Fallout 4, the fishy stick was referenced once again, with a fish, a Y face-up letter block, and a stick being found within a bathtub.
Well, if that isn't a convenient way for us to segue into some trivia for Fallout New Vegas, I don't know what is. The game's opening actually spawned not just a meme, but a mod, and then an official reference to fans' reactions, all in one fell swoop. During the starting moments of the title, the player is presented with a series of ink blots, with fans arguing that one of these images actually looks like two bears high-fiving, though sadly the game did not provide this option as a response. To correct this fatal flaw, Ted DeMann released a mod which would change the possible response to include the option to say that it is in fact two bears high-fiving. Obsidian picked up on these reactions to this image and decided to make a reference to this in the game's Honest Hearts DLC, with the introduction of a character named Two Bears High-Fiving. Speaking of mods being used to introduce new features in the game, one element of New Vegas actually has an error. The feral ghoul Roma has an issue when being loaded into editing software. Though this isn't too big of an issue, as it doesn't cause conflicts within the game itself, the file attempts to draw from a model labeled MMM-Ghoul-Variant v1.nif. What makes this particularly interesting is that this is one of the feral ghoul variants that was created for a mod of Fallout 3, called Mart's Mutant Mod. This would seem to suggest that Obsidian had actually used this mod as a way of experimenting with Fallout 3 during development of New Vegas, while they worked to develop new features for the game.
One of these real numbers can be found in Fallout 4 with a nifty telephonic Easter egg. A calendar that is found in the player's house at the beginning of the game contains a number to call listed as 18884 Vault-Tec. When the player calls this in real life, it will lead to this message.
Thank you for calling Vault-Tec, your first choice in post-nuclear survival. We're sorry, but due to unexpectedly high call volume, all representatives are currently busy. Please stay on the line, and someone will be with you as soon as possible. There are 101 million callers in front of you. Estimated wait time 78,643 hours.
The number could also be found at the bottom of the website set up to promote the game before it was released. However, this phone number wasn't exclusive to Fallout 4. The Easter egg can even be found in the E3 gameplay video for Fallout 3. The fan-favorite post-apocalyptic RPG Fallout New Vegas was unfortunately riddled with many bugs and glitches on release due to a shockingly short 18-month development cycle. The final update for the PC version of the game was released on July 7th of 2011. However, on December 29th of the same year, Josh Sawyer, the game's project director, released a mod for the game, simply known as jsawyer.esp. While not an official update or patch, the mod was intended to bring a number of tweaks and changes to the game that were never implemented prior to release. Some noteworthy changes include a huge difficulty rebalance, making food and water much more rare, lowering the level cap from 50 to 30 35 while also lowering the amount of experience received and reducing carry capacity to just a third of the vanilla game. Along with these more punishing changes, the mod also fixes several bugs and rebalances a number of weapons and armor, as well as removing the need for special training to use the game's iconic power armor. To quote Josh Sawyer himself, "This is not official and it's not a patch. If it disintegrates your game, do a Kareem and skyhook the .esp into your recycle bin," referencing American basketball player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and his trademark hookshot. In June 2018, Bethesda Softworks filed a lawsuit against Behavior Interactive and Warner Bros. Entertainment over the mobile title Westworld. Bethesda claimed that Westworld was a rip-off of its own game, Fallout Shelter, released in 2015. Not only this, but both games were developed by Behavior Interactive, with Bethesda claiming that copyrighted code had been reused. And a bug which was present in earlier versions of Fallout Shelter could also be found in Westworld. On December 12, 2018, a notice had been filed in federal court that both sides had reached an amicable resolution and would bear their own attorneys' fees and costs. On January 15th, Westworld was removed from all app stores, and with its in-app purchases being deactivated soon after. Interestingly, Behavior Interactive stated on January 25th that Westworld's removal from the App Store and Google Play was entirely unrelated to their suit with Bethesda, and that the timing was coincidental.
But this reference is sort of obscure, so it requires a bit of a refresher. In the Doctor Who episode, Silence in the Library, the Doctor finds some researchers who have special suits. The suits have a special function where it could keep the user alive, in a sense, after they die, and could allow them to speak by retaining their consciousness. One of the first people who died would repeat the words, "Who turned out the lights?" over and over again. If the player has a special perk called Wild Wasteland while fighting the enemy, the phrase, "Hey, who turned out the lights?" can be heard coming from the suit. The game also has another sneaky Doctor Who reference. An NCR emergency radio broadcast in the game states, "Bravo, Bravo, Charlie, the Doctor is coming," referencing the BBC and the Doctor. It's also been speculated that the game's sonic emitter is a reference to Captain Jack Harkness's sonic blaster in the episode The Empty Child. And there's also a small chance that the game's Securitron robots will shout "Exterminate" during combat. Hello there and welcome to Video Game Leftovers by VG Facts, a show where we explore game data and promotional material to reveal content that was cut from games. Today we'll be showing you some of the leftovers from the classic post-apocalyptic RPG, Fallout. The original Fallout was released in October 1997 for PC and Macintosh by Interplay and developed by Black Isle Studios alongside the founding members of Troika Games. Originally conceived as an adaptation of the Generic Universal Role-Playing System, or GURPS for short, the GURPS license was pulled during a legal dispute over the violent nature of the game. After losing the rights to use the GURPS system, development continued using the now iconic Special system, Special being an acronym of Strength, Perception, Endurance, Charisma, Intelligence, Agility, and Luck, the major stats used for the characters in the game. Remnants of the GURPS system can only be found in the original demo, in the early character interface. Speaking of the original demo, a lot of content was either modified or cut entirely from that early version of the game, most noteworthy being the iconic Vault Boy images used for the character stats and perks, which early in development were referred to as quirks. They were specific character bonuses that became available every few levels, and gave your character unique traits and abilities. Some of the cut traits and abilities include Bad Breath, Colorblind, Combat Paralysis, Common Sense, and of course, Pick Nose. Some of the items present in the demo were also changed. The inventory icon for Mentats originally appeared as a syringe rather than the pill form used in the final version. Stimpaks used the icon for Super Stimpaks. The wire cutters were changed to a more generic and useful tool, and the all-important water chip had its icon completely replaced, although functionally it stayed the same. Moving on from the demo, the final release of the game had a number of items cut or left unused, such as a gold locket and a small statuette, which didn't make any appearance until Fallout 2. More interestingly though, there's an icon for what looks like a rusty knife. It's possible that it was intended to be used as a melee weapon, and it closely resembles the knife shown in the instruction manual. There were also two cut items which seem to go together. The first is the field switch, with a description which reads, "An electronic transmission device with a very simple and large toggle button. It looks like it was recently made and designed for very large hands." The second item is Tangler's Hand, which reads, "A cybernetic manipulator in the shape and form of a hand, damaged due to the sloppy nature of the removal process." In issue 8 of the Fallout Bible, developer Tim Kaine wrote, "I'm pretty sure that both of these items were part of deleted quests. Tangler's Hand was used to prove that you killed someone, and I think it was an additive, which was heavily modified near the end of Fallout's development. I'm even less clear on the field switch, but I remember we had lots of discussion on how to handle the player bringing down the force fields in the military base, so it was probably going to be used for that, but then got tossed aside when another solution was used. Mr. Taylor may remember these better than I. The Mr. Taylor that was spoken of refers to Chris Taylor, lead designer of Fallout and creator of the special system, who later confirmed the story. There's another cut item called the Brotherhood of Steel Honor Code. It has a placeholder icon that just says thingy, and the description reads, a holotape with a rough symbol of the Brotherhood of Steel inscribed on it. Use the tape to transfer the data to your Pip-Boy. The contents of the tape tell a story about the formation and values of the Brotherhood of Steel, a quasi-religious organization in the game. Included in the final release of the game are several unused maps. By pressing Ctrl and R on the title screen, you can gain access to a recording mode, which the developers presumably forgot to remove or disable. It's used to record a demo to play on the title screen and gives you a full list of maps used in the game, and several which aren't. These include Brodead.map, a destroyed Brotherhood of Steel bunker. During the game, super mutants attack several areas after a certain amount of time has passed in-game, but the bunker never gets attacked. Junk Demo map. This is the map used in the demo, but it's mostly broken. And finally, Vipers map, a camp for a group of raiders known as the Vipers, who would only appear much later in Fallout New Vegas. Several endings mention a super mutant invasion, but despite the super mutants appearing in several locations throughout the game world, no invasion actually takes place. This is why the following ending for Junktown remains unused.
The mutants are slowed, but not stopped, by the brave defenders of Junktown. When the army finishes their brutal siege, nothing of Junktown remains.
Because of a bug involving a missing NPC, an ending line for the followers of the Apocalypse also goes unused.
The followers of the Apocalypse rise to become a major influence in New California. With your help, they gain control of the LA Boneyard.
An unused Brotherhood of Steel ending makes reference to both the super mutant invasion and to a traitor who never appears in the game. This ending also doesn't have a corresponding image to go with it.
The Brotherhood of Steel repels the first wave of mutant invasion, but a traitor in their midst causes the Citadel to fall. Fortunately, the advanced technology is mastered slowly by the mutants, and they were unable to use it against you.
And finally, for one of the most unusual pieces of cut content, during very early development, a faction known as the Slanter were cut entirely, along with a related area simply called the Burrows. According to design documents and notes, they were originally mutated raccoons who escaped from a research facility. Despite being cut so early on, there is still one reference to them left in the game, in a log dated January 12, 2076. It reads, with batch 11-011, we have improved the mitotic cycle efficiency by 43%. We have infected 53 raccoons with the new strain. In addition to the now expected size increase, behavioral tests confirmed an increase in intelligence and manual dexterity by 19 points on the Schlur Cap Index. Unfortunately, several subjects escaped confinement and had to be hunted down and dispatched. Major Barnett ordered the remaining subjects terminated. 2 pairs were unaccounted for. In regards to this cut faction, lead programmer Tim Kaine has been quoted as saying, "As for the Burrow, this location was written by an early designer associated with the project. While it was well written, I feel like its content was not appropriate to our Fallout universe, mainly based on its style and feel in the game and not on its artistic merit." While writer Scott Campbell has said, while Brian was off and running writing quests for our furry editions, the artists had a scope meeting about the number of characters in the game. We had more designed than they had time to actually build and animate, so a compromise was needed. Since the mutant animals were rare, required several sets of armor, and totally different animations, they were chopped. Poor Brian, he put so much love into those varmints. Hello and welcome to Video Game Leftovers by VG Facts, a show where we explore game data and promotional material to reveal content that was cut from games. Today we'll be showing you some of the leftovers from Fallout 2, the sequel to the 1997 cult classic, Fallout. Released in 1998, only 1 year after the first game, Fallout 2 expanded on the groundwork that had been laid out before it. It had a bigger world, bigger story, bigger freedom, and bigger guns. Early on in development, the storyline changed wildly. The first concept revolved around a town populated by robots inspired by 50s and 60s TV shows. It was also created by an artificial intelligence, and all the surrounding areas were competing for control over the town's technology. The second storyline saw the army of super mutants from the first game traveling the wasteland in a huge armored land fortress, capturing other mutants to use as slave labor. Eventually, the design was nailed down, and neither of these ideas came to be. The final story is one that gamers have played through countless times over the years, and to this day Fallout 2 is still regarded as one of the best role-playing games ever made. Fallout 2 is a big game, and with any big game there are areas that don't make it into the finished product. Fallout 2 is no exception to this. One of the game's removed areas is the Abbey, which was home to a group of monks who hoarded pre-war technology. This is mentioned by Tim Kaine in the 6th edition of the Fallout Bible. Kaine said, "It was supposed to be an independent organization, probably of Jesuits or something like that. I'd probably go with the latter to avoid right-wing complaints. The monks preserved knowledge in the form of books, blueprints, and items, and they tried to preserve technical knowledge mainly. Unlike the Brotherhood of Steel, who hoarded their technology and used it to stay superior, the Abbey was open to anyone as long as they did not damage anything. All they had to offer was knowledge, because not a single preserved item functioned. One more thing, the monks did not understand the knowledge in the books they preserved. They treated them like holy materials to be read and copied and cared for, but not acted upon. Think of the book A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller, which was the inspiration for the Abbey." Another of the more interesting cut areas was the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, building, which at one point was intended to be a rather major part of the game. The building included areas such as a parking lot turned jungle that was filled with spore plants, a petting zoo filled with starving humans, and various color-coded sublevels full of poisonous gases and mutant fruit flies. There was also a selection of special items that were supposed to be found in this area. This included a bug spray canister which killed all bugs instantly, a plant spray canister that did the same for plants, marijuana, and a can of dog food. Also cut was a packet of Pop Rocks, which if eaten with Nuka-Cola would make your character explode. There were also a handful of custodial hologram NPCs, along with a talking toaster with an IQ of 6,000 that was obsessed with making toast. This toaster is a reference to both The Brave Little Toaster by Thomas M. Dish and Talkie Toaster from the British TV series Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf's AI, Holly, also originally had an IQ of 6,000. At one point in development, you were supposed to be able to get inside the USS Quetzal, a space shuttle belonging to the Hubologists. Unfortunately, all that remains of that map is a room made up of unused art tiles. Speaking of the Hubologists, during development they were actually known as Elronologists. Everyone involved in the development process insists that any relation to real-world persons and organizations, like Scientologists, is purely coincidental. To quote Fallout 2 designer Chris Avallone, "You might think that the Elronologists were the original name for the Hubologists, but any relationship between the groups is purely coincidental." There had also been plans for more FMVs to play during the game, including the first time you get access to the car. For that FMV in particular, technical designer for Fallout 2 Scott Edwards explained, "As I remember, the car.mve was actually done, but turned out so bad that we dumped it." There were more ideas for the car too. Its role in the game also changed during development, along with its graphics, as mentioned by lead designer Matt Norton. The car was originally going to be powered by fusion or fission or something nifty and nuclear, something that would allow us to not have to worry about running out of gas, and those big tanks in the back were representative of this big bulky power source that was bolted onto the back of a 57 Chevy. We had thought at one starry-eyed point that the car would be something that you could upgrade with more speed, armor, weapons, etc., and that it could be a more important part of the game. Well, the engine and programmer tasking weren't up to the idea of having a moving vehicle in the game, so all of that went out the window. One of the most well-known and recognizable hallmarks of every Fallout game is the narration done by Ron Perlman. During the game over sequences, you would be treated to one of the selection of lines to fit. There were also plans to have a series of more light-hearted lines included, but they were either cut from the game or never recorded. These lines included, "You're dead. Again. Boy, you are stupid. And dead. Ha 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 ha. You're dead, moron. And you're dead. Maybe you should start the game over with a different character. Your point allocation sucks." Interestingly, some of the cut content from Fallout 2 was later used in the New Vegas DLC Old World Blues, such as the toaster from the EPA building and a malfunctioning hologram that was supposed to appear there. The lobotomite enemies that roam the area were also intended to appear in Fallout 2, as explained by designer Leon Boyarsky, while talking about a loading screen from the first game. Jason and I had already done a first draft of the story for Fallout 2, and at one point the player was to be ambushed by lobotomized creatures, lobotomites, when a renegade Brotherhood soldier comes to his rescue. Get it? It's Fallout Tales number 2, and it was an illustration of a scene from Fallout 2. Of course, the story was changed after Fallout 1 was released, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. This is in reference to one of the loading screens from the original Fallout depicting issue number 2 of a Fallout comic book. Being issue number 2, it was intended to foreshadow the events of the second game, but because the story was changed between the first game's release and development of the second game, it didn't match up in the way that it was originally intended to. Hello and welcome to VG Facts Video Game Leftovers, a show where we explore game data and promotional material to reveal content that was cut from games. Today we'll be taking a look at the 2008 action RPG Fallout 3, and please be aware that we'll be talking about the game developed by Bethesda Softworks and not the cancelled game by the original developers commonly known as Van Buren. Black Isle Studios, a subsidiary of Interplay Entertainment and developers of the first two Fallout games, originally began work on a direct sequel to Fallout 2. However, development was halted in favour of working on other projects, and in 2003 the project was effectively cancelled after Interplay cut their PC development team. In 2004, Bethesda Softworks, perhaps best known for the Elder Scrolls games, announced that they would be developing Fallout 3, and in 2006 they went on to purchase all rights to the Fallout franchise. With the shift in development to an open world environment on a much larger scale than the previous Fallout games, the map designers needed to find ways to produce their game maps more efficiently. This could be seen pretty clearly by the unused areas simply known as bathrooms and ruins, which seem to serve as templates for quickly copying and pasting common elements into other maps. There are other unused maps with names beginning with Kit, Kit Office, Kit Vault, and Kit Metro, but since most of the maps using those pieces are all relatively unique, it's not clear if they were intended as templates for prototyping, or perhaps that the designs for those areas were originally more generic. A map exists for an area known as Potomac Steamworks. It's relatively complete outside from the lack of items and contains the same feral ghouls that are used in the Red Racer Factory. Another interesting area is labelled as Vault 101 Demo. While the name suggests it's a demo for the Vault part at the start of the game, it looks more like a prototype or an unfinished test. Some parts of the map are incomplete and the only inhabitant is a Mr. Handy robot. Interestingly, the map contains a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor, a book which increases your barter skill, and because there are only 25 of each skill book hidden in the game, it's actually only possible to find 24 legitimately. Although it isn't clear where they might have appeared, there are unused signs for the Bureau of Special Affairs and the Center of Extratypical Research, along with a hanging sign for the Halls of Tomorrow and Our Lady of Hope Hospital. There are also a series of unused signs apparently intended for the Citadel, and one that seems to be for the Federal Trade Bureau. Throughout the game, you'll find various types of robots, but hidden within the game files are unused graphics for unique faction decals. There are Brotherhood of Steel textures for the Robobrain, along with the details suggesting that there would have been a matching Enclave variant, although there are no matching textures. There is an unused Outcast skin for the Mr. Gutsy robot. There are also entries for an Enclave-themed version, although there are no resources. However, an Enclave Mr. Gutsy was included in the Broken Steel DLC. Despite being unique to the Enclave, there are textures for an Outcast-themed iBot, and models for US Army, Brotherhood, and Enclave versions, but these are all missing textures. The iBot that appears in-game just uses the generic texture. Perhaps the most recognizable robot, the Protectron, also seems to have at one point had unique Enclave and Brotherhood variations, although no textures exist. Like the Outcast Mr. Gutsy, the Enclave protection was added with the Broken Steel DLC. Along with this, there are a number of attachments that went unused, including a fire hazard sticker, a laser warning label, a sheriff's badge, and a woman riding a bomb, which seems to be connected to Megaton. A series of numbers also exist, but aren't set up as actual attachments and aren't used at any point. Many items were either cut or modified throughout development. Some of these never made it past the design stages, but others were clearly removed much closer to release. Examples of items that exist in the game files to a lesser or greater extent are the pink variation of the T-45D power armor, complete with helmet, Vault suits for Vault 87 and 92, and both the Cryo Grenade and Cryo Mine, which were later retextured and used in the Mothership Zeta DLC. It's obvious that many of the weapon designs, both used and unused, went through several drastic alterations and modifications during development. These include minor details such as the Shish Kebab weapon originally being called the Shishka Sword, through to designs for a ray gun weapon which included a live alien. There are also numerous drawings of potential Pip-Boy designs. These vary in size and shape, and even include a radical departure for a wristwatch design. There are even cut storyline elements to be found hidden in the concept art. At one point it looks like your father would have been turned into a super mutant, although how or why that might have happened isn't clear. There are many other details hidden away in the concept art, like early designs for the Mr. Handy robots and even people riding giant mole rats, so if you're a fan of the games, it's worth taking a look for yourself. Sadly, Adam Aldomovich, the man responsible for the concept art, passed away on February 10, 2012, but his unused designs and ideas are still around.
Fallout is easily one of the most iconic video game series of all time. This fan-favourite series spans multiple decades, genres, and, with the recent release of the television series, different media entirely. Beloved not only for its unpredictable gameplay and poignant storytelling, but also its 1950s retro-futuristic aesthetics. Today, we'll be taking you on another relaxing stroll through the desolated wastelands of facts, trivia, and secrets in the Fallout franchise. With that said, where better to begin than with the granddaddy of it all, 1997's Fallout. In a developer profile featured on fan website No Mutants Allowed, a game designer for Fallout, Jesse Heinig, gave some insight into the game's design and his impact on the series as a whole. In the interview, Jesse talks about how he fought to keep companions in the game even after they'd been scrapped from the project, saying, "I lobbied hard for a couple of things that made it into the game. Companions would join the Vault Dweller since they were in the initial design doc but got cut, but I figured out a way to fake Ian into the game and the programmers decided to make it stick." The Ian companion, referred to here, is actually based on one of Jesse's best friends at the time. In a behind-the-scenes creator chat on the Modifius YouTube channel, Jesse clarified that, quote, "The actual Ian is still alive and doing well, and has never shot me in the back with a submachine gun." Ian even has a sly reference of his own. When asked about the apocalypse using the "tell me more about" mechanic, he will tell the player, "You know, we will always have war, just the next one's going to be fought with sticks." This is a nod to the famous quote by theoretical physicist Albert Einstein, "I don't know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." While on the topic of the various companions in Fallout Bible 9, Jesse Heinig states that the companion character of Tycho is at least partially inspired by the character of Master Yupa from Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, the 1984 Japanese animated film which was directed by Hayao Miyazaki, a year before founding Studio Ghibli. Heinig said, "In some ways Tycho is reminiscent of Master Yupa from Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. He carries a gas mask just in case, wears hardened leather armor, has a knife, knuckles, canteen, and the usual survival gear. I pictured him as this guy in leather armor, Fallout style, with a gas mask around his neck, goggles to keep out sand and glare, a sand-colored cloak usable for camouflage and to keep the sun off, and a double-barreled shotgun." Tycho himself also references the game that ostensibly started the Fallout franchise, Wasteland, with his grandfather being a, quote, "desert ranger." If you don't know, the Desert Rangers are a faction featured in Wasteland. Despite never uttering a single line of dialogue, for obvious reasons, Dogmeat may well be one of, if not the most iconic companion in the entire series, with different iterations of the character appearing in every mainline title. Scott Benny was a designer who arrived at the name Dogmeat for the player's dog companion. The name was initially applied to Jacob's dog in the hub, previously named Dogshit. Later, the name was applied to the dog companion by either Tim Kaine or Jason Anderson. Fallout even contains references to its own cut content, things that had been planned early on in development but were removed for various reasons. If you let the Master's army destroy Necropolis, a ghoul refugee who survived the invasion can be found hiding behind a bookcase with dialogue talking about the invasion, whilst also mentioning the attacking super mutants had some steam trucks. These steam trucks are the only working mechanically propelled machines mentioned in the game, and are only mentioned in this Fallout game. In the 8th installment of the Fallout Bible, Fallout 2 developer Chris Avellone revealed that these steam trucks were planned for Fallout, but they were only mentioned in passing for art reasons and gameplay reasons, as if there was too much focus on these vehicles, players might start to ask where they are and why they can't drive them. Since we briefly mentioned a ghoul, why don't we take a quick look at their beginnings in the franchise. Interestingly, ghouls didn't initially have a clear in-universe origin. Over time, there's been some debate as to the official lore for their origins among Fallout devs. Tim Kaine has stated previously that ghouls are just a result of humans being bombarded with huge amounts of radiation, which is in line with scientific understanding of the effects of radiation exposure as understood in the 1950s. Chris Taylor, however, said that a mixture of both radiation and the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, that the Master used to create his race of super mutants is why they exist. Ghouls are a type of mutant. Super mutants are humans with no or minimal radiation damage who have been exposed to FEV. Ghouls are humans with significant radiation damage exposed to FEV. While Chris Avellone initially sided with his fellow Chris's view in his Fallout Bible, he was later convinced to support the radiation-only version. In our humble opinion, this only adds to the flavour of these mysterious characters and how they came to be after so much knowledge was lost to nuclear destruction. The character Set, the leader of Necropolis in Fallout, seemed to be based on Set from the ancient Egyptian mythology. In myth, Set was originally the Lord of the Desert, master of storms, disorder and warfare, and in general a trickster. He was also seen as the embodiment of the necessary and creative element of violence and disorder within an ordered world. As such, Set, leading the shadowy town of Necropolis, fits this reference quite well. While he rules over a safe haven for ghouls, he also despises the notion of peace. As one ghoul leader puts it in-game, the surface of Necropolis and the water is controlled by Set and his ghouls. We are very much a peaceful group, which disgusts Set. So, while not necessarily evil, he certainly is violent and chaotic. Set's a bit of an arse, so let's look at some real foes. The floater enemies are the creation of Jason D. Anderson, who, after moving on from Interplay to found Troika Games, Anderson was most famously creative director and designer on what is often described as a flawed masterpiece, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. Pavel Dembowski, the creator of the Fallout Wiki, allegedly got a quote from Anderson relating to the floater, saying, "We called it the Sphincter Monster after I used a porn image for its mouth." Though it's worth noting there is no record of this quote posted online. The internal files in Fallout and Fallout 2, however, do potentially back this up. The floater is referred to as masphnxx.frm in the game's data, which at least somewhat resembles the word sphincter. In a Reddit Q&A about the infamous Fallout 76, Jeff Gardner and Ferre Bourdois were asked if the floaters in Fallout 76 are the same creatures that appeared in previous Fallout games, after them having been absent in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Bourdois responded saying, "Yes, they are the same floaters from before. FEV research was being done in both Appalachia and the West Coast." Despite receiving some mild criticism for its clunky nature, overall Fallout was met with an overwhelmingly positive response from players and critics alike. This led to a follow-up just 1 year later with the release of Fallout 2 in the fall of 1998, and of course, it is also full to the brim with notable trivia, references, and Easter eggs. Something very notable about Fallout 2, especially given the discourse in modern gaming, is that it was one of the first video games to include an LGBTQ+ representation. More specifically, it featured same-sex marriage. The small town of Modoc features a brother and sister, Maria and Davin. It's possible for the player to seduce and marry either of these two characters regardless of the sex of their character. When asked in 2019 if anyone at Black Isle Studios pushed back over this inclusion in the game, designer Chris Avallone said, "Not one. It's one of the benefits of being in control of your own franchise. Other external franchises would have potentially blocked that or asked we not include it at the time." He also went on to explain that fans didn't seem to care about it when playing the game. In an interview with Russian gaming outlet Game.exe, Fallout 2 producer and lead designer Fergus Urquhart revealed that in the early stages of the game's development, it was planned that the main character would again be the Vault Dweller from Fallout 1. This idea was scrapped early in the game's production, however, as the team thought it would be difficult to explain not only the loss of all the characters' equipment from the previous game, but also the resetting of all of their perks earned throughout it. This led to the developers settling on the idea of a brand new character referred to as the Chosen One that just so happens to be a descendant of the Vault Dweller from the original game, more specifically, their grandchild. A running joke in the game is that the Chosen One can't really spell Wanamingo properly. Throughout the game they refer to them as a number of different things like wanna mingle and wanna whatchamacallit on several occasions. Funnily enough, Chris Avallone also didn't spell it correctly either, spelling it with a double N. Chris Avallone did not like the idea of Wanamingos, and not just because of his inability to spell their name. In the Fallout Bible, Chris explains that Wanamingos, like many other things in the Wasteland, are the result of FEV experimentation. They were originally created before the Great War as bioengineered monsters that could be dropped into enemy territory as a means of attack, with their unusually long lifespan making them relentlessly effective. However, the Wanamingos encountered by the player in Fallout 2 are ones that actually escaped their confinement and spread across New California, creating their nests in the sunless crevices and uninhabited ruins of the wasteland. These creatures were created with a so-called dead man's switch that would prevent them from reproducing, and their lifespan would end around the year 2246, several years after the Chosen One encounters them in Fallout 2. Avallone wrote, "They do live a long time, but they were dying out at the time of Fallout 2. They have only been sighted in the F2 area and nowhere else in the Wastelands. The eggs you see in Fallout 2 are the last generation of Wanamingos to exist in the Wasteland, and the young Wanamingos seen in F2 will perish in 5 years, and their parents a few years before that. An internal genetic clock will simply stop ticking, and they'll fall over dead. As a final note, this is strictly a personal decision on my part. If you want them to live for a fan fiction, pen and paper role-playing campaign purposes, or your own peace of mind, Feel free to have some of them survive the stopping of their genetic clock. In the Black Isle universe, however, the little buggers are already dead and their irradiated shells are scattered among the floor of the abandoned mines throughout Northern California, where they make nice crunchy noises when you step on them. True to his word, the Wanamingos did not appear directly in any more Fallout games, unless you count the plushes in Fallout 76. They were planned to appear in the capital wastelands of Fallout 3, even having concept art drawn up for them, but they were cut from the game during development. Of course, no one is safe from bugs and glitches, and Fallout 2 is no exception, and we're not talking about rad roaches. In the top left corner of the map to Broken Hills, 4 mysterious metal chests can be seen off to the side that are seemingly inaccessible. It is, however, possible to reach them with a very specific method. Start by going near the top right corner of the map and clicking on the half hex right between the fence and the part of the grid which you would click to enter the world map, and then click the half hex right above the fence. Your character will then briefly walk off screen and appear on the other side of the fence, which should allow you to make your way to the chests. These chests contain the stock of all 4 shops in Broken Hills. They can also have their contents stolen without the risk of the player losing any karma or representation. Why these chests are here is unknown, but we're sure many a Vault Dweller are glad they are, if they can reach them. And this is far from the only questionable detail in the game. Being set in a post-apocalyptic America, and more specifically the future, Fallout 2 refers to American football's Super Bowl 112. The game mentions that the Little Rock Saints played the Anaheim Jets on February 14th, 2075 on Super Sunday, with the Little Rock Saints losing 90-95. However, this information is from the Sierra Depot GNN transcript, which is canonically an unreliable source, though perhaps this is just futuristic cope from Saints fans. Interestingly though, in the real world, the Super Bowl began in the year 1967, which means that the Super Bowl 112 would not fall in 2075, but rather 4 years later in 2079. Further to this, February 14th, 2075 will be a Thursday, so unless the days of the week changed, or Super Bowl Sunday became the less catchy Super Bowl Thursday, all of this information is dubious at best. Fallout 2 also has its fair share of odd characters with odd backgrounds, such as the character of Ethel Wright, who seems to have a small piece of trivia related to her name. The name Ethel, and its spelling in particular, appears to be a play on words stemming from the common name for ethanol, the most prevalent alcohol found in beverages, also known as ethyl alcohol. This is backed up further by the fact that her family's livelihood is based around distilling alcohol and her disapproval of it. The character Marcus appears as a companion and talking head in Fallout 2, and in Fallout New Vegas as an NPC.
Didn't your folks explain this to you?
He's voiced by Michael Dorn in both, which is why he was given the line, "I am not a merry mutant," to reference Dorn's role as Worf in the Star Trek Next Generation episode Cupid, in which Worf and the rest of the Enterprise crew are thrust into a fantasy world where Picard is Robin Hood, and much to his chagrin, Worf becomes one of his merry men.
I protest, I am not a merry man!
Marcus also claims to be the only super mutant who is no longer sterile. However, Chris Avallone, who actually wrote this specific line of dialogue, has since confirmed that this was a joke by Marcus and that all super mutants remain entirely sterile due to the effects of FEV. It would be a few years before fans would see another installment of the franchise. In 2001, Fallout saw its first departure from the RPG conventions with the release of Fallout Tactics: Brotherhood of Steel. The much anticipated follow-up was overall well received, reaching the top 10 of the NPD Intellect's computer game sales ranking, peaking at 4th place in its second week. This is particularly impressive when you consider the significant shift in genre from previous titles. While the game may differ mechanically, as with every Fallout, it's filled to the brim with references to other media and pop culture. A bonus mission exists in the game that takes place in the town of Springfield. This mission only appeared on the 4th bonus CD of Fallout Tactics, though it can be accessed by using Notepad to edit the file boss.cfg by changing the value of misc bonus mission equals false to true and saving, the Springfield area will become available. Springfield is a clear reference to the hit 90s cartoon The Simpsons, but the similarities don't stop at the name. The town is overshadowed by 2 large steam towers from a nuclear power plant. There's also a pub called Joe's Tavern, which could not only be a parody of Homer's drinking hole of choice, Moe's Tavern, but perhaps also a reference to a specific episode of The Simpsons, Lemon of Troy, in which Shelbyville is shown to be a mirror of Springfield, even featuring its own dive bar with the highly coincidental name Joe's. There is a bronze statue in the town square reminiscent of Jebediah Springfield featured in The Simpsons, as well as Planet Donut with a large donut sign in reference to the iconic Lard Lad donuts. There are other references to film and TV in the Rock Falls mission. The raider bosses are called Bo, Daisy, Jesse, and Luke, which are the names of the Duke family from the Dukes of Hazzard TV series. This mission also features a prisoner called Miles Dyson and a robotic arm, both of which are references to James Cameron's sci-fi classic Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The Terminator references don't end there though. The Great Bend mission boasts a hydraulic press similar to what is used to destroy the Terminator in the original movie. In the game, the player can also encounter a cybernetic Brahmin called the B-1000, which itself is a reference to the T-1000 from Judgment Day. The Robo-Cow also has several lines of dialogue that make comical nods to the Terminator series, such as, "I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. I am a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal T-bone. Hasta la vista, coffee," and of course, "Moo will be back," among others. The 1999 hit movie The Matrix also gets a sly nod. The Coppertops special encounter features humans being used as what are essentially batteries to power a robot empire. While in Fallout Tactics, the humans are being forced to run on treadmills rather than directly hooked up to machines to have their electrical impulses harvested, the themes are too similar to be mere coincidence. Of course, there's quite a few references to other games as well. The Mort special encounter featured a character of the same name, which is a reference to Planetscape Torment, for which Chris Avallone was lead designer. In both games, Mort is a floating skull with a New York accent. Additionally, the Devil Thorn jacket armor is a reference to the Demon Spike coat, a unique armor in the original Diablo. Not only do the items have similar names, but they also have identical stat lines. Lastly, there's even a reference to a few tech giants. In the Newton mission, the player has a conversation with Albert Lamore. Albert mentions an entity known as Satan Soft, who has a devoted follower by the name of Beelzebub Gates, a combination of Beelzebub, the devil, and Microsoft founder Bill Gates. In the same mission, the player also encounters a man by the name of Tobias Pest. Tobias makes mention of a paradise referred to as Panasonica, a nod to Panasonic, and also says that after 11 days of fasting, he was visited in his deepest dreams by a Saint Sony. Now, when we mentioned Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel, some of you might have thought to yourselves, I don't remember the tactics, I thought it was just called Brotherhood of Steel. Well, fear not, it's not the Mandela effect. Fallout Brotherhood of Steel was another spin-off title and yet another departure from the classic Fallout open world, having the player follow a much more linear adventure in the wastes with what are essentially stages. It was also the first Fallout game to reach the console market, seeing a release on both Xbox and PlayStation 2. The game's said to be set somewhere between the events of Fallout 1 and 2, attempting to clear up perceived issues with the main story and remnants of the Super Mutant Uprising. While it's generally accepted that the game takes place in Texas, this is never actually stated anywhere in the game, but there are distinct clues, such as many of the Brotherhood of Steel talking with southern accents in the town of Carbon, which is a real town in Texas. That being said, there are 18 towns called Carbon in the US. Another interesting note is that an energy drink called Balls appears prominently in many areas of the game in lieu of the iconic Nuka-Cola, which decidedly never emigrated outside of the region because of the dominating presence of Nuka-Cola elsewhere. With all of that said, in a 2007 interview with GameSpy when talking about the canon of Fallout 3, Todd Howard reiterated, "For our purposes, neither Fallout Tactics nor Fallout Brotherhood of Steel happened." In this same interview, Todd brings up Fallout 2, stating, "Fallout 2 is also great. but it was a little too nod nod wink wink in its jokes. Too many pop culture references, too much breaking of the fourth wall. So, with that in mind, let's move on to Fallout 3 and its nigh on countless pop culture references. While we're going to cover a great number of them, there's some that we've decided to skip, like the game's many allusions to Mad Max. Let's start with the Mr. Gutsy series of robots, who will often say,
"There's nothing I like better than the smell of plasma in the morning,"
when in combat. This is an allusion to the line,
"I love the smell of napalm in the morning,"
from Francis Ford Coppola's iconic movie Apocalypse Now, and the introduction of Lieutenant Colonel William Bill Kilgore. The atomic bomb that the player has the choice of detonating or not, as well as the Church of the Children of Atom, are both references to the second film in the original Planet of the Apes series, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, in which a population of telepathic humans worships an ancient but intact nuclear bomb. Now, would it really be a sci-fi game without at least a couple of Blade Runner references? The replicated man is a clear reference to the replicants and overall plot of the film. This was later expanded on with the synths in Fallout 4. While in combat, the super mutant companion Forks will directly quote Leon Kowalski's line in the opening of Blade Runner,
"Wake up! Time to die!"
Wake up! Time to die.
After making the decision to defuse the bomb in Megaton, the player is given a house as a reward. The butler that comes with this house is a Mr. Handy called Wadsworth. This is a nod to Wadsworth the Butler from the film adaptation of Clue, or Cluedo for those outside of North America. As with other Mr. Handy robots in Fallout 3, Wadsworth speaks in a very similar fashion to Tim Curry in the film.
Is everything ready?
Allow me to introduce myself.
The character Roy McLaren will occasionally say,
"Can't nobody eat 50 eggs?"
which is a reference to the scene in Cool Hand Luke where the man himself accepts a challenge to eat 50 eggs in an hour, like the guy from Smash Mouth.
I can eat 50 eggs.
Nobody can eat 50 eggs.
In the Pavlovsky Preservation Shelter during the Those quest, the player encounters Brian Wilkes, who will say,
"Now I know what a TV dinner feels like."
This is of course a direct quote from the movie Die Hard.
I know what a TV dinner feels like.
His name also has the same initials as Bruce Willis, the actor for John McClane. The quest's name itself is also a reference to the 1954 sci-fi horror classic Them, a film that features giant ants as a result of nuclear testing in New Mexico. The weapon Callahan's Magnum refers to Dirty Harry's signature Smith & Wesson 44 Magnum revolver. If the player has all the add-ons installed, it is by far the most powerful handgun in the game, fitting with Harry's quote about his own weapon,
"Being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off."
And of course, the character Harold Callahan, who is briefly mentioned in Fallout 3's Broken Steel DLC, is a reference to the titular Harry Callahan from Dirty Harry. Another movie gun reference comes in the form of the Infiltrator. Its design is directly inspired by the gun used by the character Snake Plissken in the film Escape from New York. The Blood Ties quest and Lucy West, the woman who starts it, is a reference to Lucy Westenra, a character from Bram Stoker's Dracula. This quest also involves numerous people who sustain themselves through the consumption of human blood. Lucy tells the player to deliver the letter to her family in the small town of Arafu. Arafu is a real village in Romania, best known for its proximity to the former castle of Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad the Impaler, who the famous Count Dracula is based on. Mentats, one of the many chems in the Fallout games, temporarily increases intelligence and perception. This is a reference to the sci-fi epic novel Dune, in which Mentats are humans trained to function as living computers and can effortlessly process complex computations and retain huge amounts of information. Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta add-on has several pop culture references of its own. Elliot Terkorian shares his first name and initials with the main human protagonist of Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Elliot Taylor. When asked what the Zetans want with Earth, Elliot will come up with 4 possible explanations, all of which reference different sci-fi movies and TV shows. The resource-consuming theory is the plot of the movie Independence Day. The theory that aliens seeded life on Earth comes from Season 6, Episode 20 of Star Trek The Next Generation, titled The Chase. And the theory that the Zetans may have misinterpreted some part of human culture as a declaration of war comes from the 1996 movie Mars Attacks. The theory that they want to replace people on Earth with clones is the plot of the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Additionally, the way the abominations point and scream to alert each other to hostiles also mimics the alien clones from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Another nod in Mothership Zeta can be found in the waste disposal area of the ship during the quest Among the Stars. There is an optional interaction here with Sally where the player can choose what an incredible smell you've discovered. This is a reference to one of Han Solo's lines in Star Wars A New Hope after the heroes find themselves trapped in the maintenance level of the Death Star.
What an incredible smell you've discovered!
The supplemental book The Art of Fallout 3 mentions during the design process of the robots for the game, Emil Pagliarulo's input for every robot was to make it more like Robbie the Robot. Robbie the Robot first appeared in 1956's Forbidden Planet, but is often cited as the hardest working robot in Hollywood, having starred in numerous film and TV shows, including The Invisible Boy, The Addams Family, Columbo, and perhaps most famously, Lost in Space. While the Protectron's design went through many iterations, the team settled on a vintage look that captures the quintessential 1950s robot character more than any other. Another classic movie gets a nod at the Broadway cinema marquee. The film titled I Married a Maoist references the 1949 film The Woman on Pier 13, which was originally planned to be titled I Married a Communist. Another possible reference could be Dr. Zimmer, as the 1993 film Mandroid also features Dr. Carl Zimmer, who was the creator of an android. There's a couple of fun nods to the timeless Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Brotherhood of Steel Squire Maxon says that he sort of shot Sentinel Lions and that it's just a flesh wound. This is of course a reference to the Black Knight from the Holy Grail, who, after having both his arms removed, claims that it's just a flesh wound.
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left! Yes, I have. Look! It's just a flesh wound.
Not only this, but Kimber's dialogue, that's funny, I thought we were an autonomous collective, while a more subtle reference is a direct quote spoken to King Arthur by a woman when she finds out there even is a King of England.
I thought we were an autonomous collective.
It will come as a surprise to nobody that the quest Stealing Independence and its main objective of stealing the Declaration of Independence is likely inspired by the plot of the 2004 film National Treasure, which involves Nicolas Cage, presumably pretending to be a different person, tasked with stealing the Declaration of Independence. When asked what they do for the Brotherhood of Steel, Knight Captain Dusk tells the player she's a sniper, and follows up with, "Put any muty bastard within 1 mile of me and my rifle, and well, pack it up troops, fight's over." This is a reference to Saving Private Ryan, where the character Jackson makes the same remark, though he's talking about Hitler and not mutants.
Used to put me in this here sniper rifle anywhere, up to and including 1 mile of Adolf Hitler, with a clear line of sight, sir. Pack your bags, fellas, war's over. Amen.
When asked their real name, Knight Captain Gallows responds with, "What's the pool up to?" Similar to the response from another character in Saving Private Ryan, Captain Miller, when asked a similar question about his occupation.
What's the pool on me up to right now? What's it up to?
One of the Brotherhood of Steel soldiers attempts to rally his brethren by asking whether they want to live forever. This quote may be referencing a line from both the film adaptation of Starship Troopers and Robert A. Heinlein's original book.
Come on, you ape! You want to live forever?
This references a quote that sometimes is attributed to the real United States Marine Sergeant Major Daniel Joseph Dan Daly. Though this quote has an extensive history, going back to at least Frederick the Great, who allegedly said something along the lines of, "You damn rascals, do you want to live forever?" In Tenpenny Tower, the player can find a tricycle in the hallway, as well as bloodstains on the walls and an overturned chair. This is a reference to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and the iconic shot following Danny riding his tricycle through the halls of the hotel, as well as the scene in which the main character sees two little girls in the hallway, then blinks, and they are laying butchered on the ground. There's another nod behind Mayor McCready's full name, Robert Joseph McCready. R.J. McCready, played by Kurt Russell, is the name of the main protagonist in John Carpenter's The Thing, which is the best film ever, by the way. Once the player beats the mission, The American Dream, and convinces President Eden to self-destruct, Three Dog will report the incident on Galaxy News Radio, saying,
"Ding dong, the sanctimonious, self-righteous, self-proclaimed presidential asshole is dead."
This is a reference to Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, sung by the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz.
Ding dong, the witch is dead, witch, oh witch, oh witch.
In Fallout 3's The Pit add-on, Everett says the line, "From here to Monroeville." This is a reference to Dawn of the Dead, a film which takes place in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. Tenpenny Tower and its attack by ghouls could also be another reference to the film series. Land of the Dead's Fiddler's Green is a fortress tower owned by wealthy elitists which is constantly assaulted by zombies. While talking to the slave found in the game's second add-on, one dialogue option players can deliver is rather blunt. "Your clothes, give them to me, now." While this may just seem like a forceful demand, it's also the same demand delivered by Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, literally word for word when encountering a group of thugs after he travels back through time, subsequently losing his clothes in the process.
"Your clothes. Give them to me, now."
In addition to this, the picture used to present the cyborg perk also bears a striking resemblance to the T-800's appearance, with a robotic face half covered in flesh, having been badly damaged as seen in Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Now, while the Fallout series is set on Earth in an alternate universe, it still includes the mention of Morse code, a language using a series of dots and dashes to represent letters of the alphabet. The professor in Fallout 2's Broken Hills talks about Morse code, but Fallout 3 was the first game in the series to actually use the code. The fact that it is still referred to as Morse code implies that the real-world inventor, Samuel Morse, existed in the Fallout universe. Several radio transmission stations utilize such messages. In the Operation Anchorage add-on, a message in Morse code is audible from the ham radio in General Chase's tent. If the player bothers to sit and translate this code, they should understand the message as, "War never changes." In another add-on for the game, The Pit, a transmission is heard in the Pit Uptown abandoned apartments. This time the decoded message isn't quite as simple, being entirely written in German. It reads like this. I'll just put it on screen because I can't read German. When translated into English, the message is, "The abyss also looks into you," a partial quote from the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. In the Mothership Zeta add-on, a radio on the Mothership Zeta bridge also emits Morse code. The message says, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Needless to say, this is the iconic quote from the first successful moon landing. Within the game's data is a set of Enclave power armor, and while unattainable naturally, it can be spawned into the game through the use of console commands. This armor differs from others in its stats, but also bears the file name Robo-Thor Armor, which refers directly to the Marvel Comics character Thor, with the helmet having a unique design resembling that of Thor's signature helmet. The game has plenty of nods to the real world too. In the Fallout universe, the Defiant 7 capsule was a pre-war spacecraft piloted by Captain Carl Bell, who is credited as the first human in space, successfully circumnavigating the Earth in 12 minutes and 7 seconds. Bell is said to have died on May 5th, 1961, when the capsule crashed upon re-entering the atmosphere. This echoes the real-life suborbital flight of Alan Shepard, the first American in space, which took place on the same date. His capsule, however, was named Freedom 7. The number 7 was used in the names of all crewed flights of Project Mercury, as the pilots were collectively known as the Mercury 7. This is referenced again by the Clarabella 7, another USSA spaceflight in the Fallout universe. Concept art can be a time capsule, giving us a glimpse into the game's earliest ideas. Locations, characters, and creatures all change throughout development, and let's not forget weapons. Concept art and even unused models exist for scrapped weapons like the Cryolator and Cryo Grenade. The grenade did make it into the Mothership Zeta DLC, however it got a facelift with a new texture and mesh. The Cryolator was cut completely from the final version of the game, but a different freeze ray with the same name did make a later appearance as a usable weapon in Fallout 4. The Wanamingo from Fallout 2 was at one point also planned to appear in Fallout 3, but was never added to the final game. Concept art shows it as a possible variant of the original, being much bigger and without any tentacles. Many members of the Black Isle team responsible for Fallout 2, as well as collaborating on many other iconic groundbreaking CRPGs, moved on to found Obsidian Entertainment after the studio's closure. They returned in astonishing fashion with the release of Fallout New Vegas. New Vegas is often cited as the pinnacle of the Fallout series, with its top quality dialogue, RPG mechanics, numerous factions, and weaving story that gives the player ample choice in how they navigate the post-apocalyptic wastes and the Sin City Strip. New Vegas managed to establish its own unique position within the Fallout universe. While it was developed by many members of the team behind an earlier Fallout entry, it was technically created by a third party and not by the IP holders of the franchise. This can make one question whether the game is considered canon in the wider Fallout series, with the new Fallout show bringing things further into question. When Todd Howard was interviewed by Vanity Fair, he revealed that the live-action Fallout show would be considered canon to the games, making sure to note that it would tell an original story rather than retell tales from the existing entries into the series. After the show was released, however, many fans felt this wasn't the case and lamented the show's apparent retconning of several events from New Vegas. Most took particular issue with the 6th episode, The Trap, which shows a blackboard depicting the end of Shady Sands, the capital of the New California Republic. The board shows Shady Sands' destruction as occurring in 2277, while New Vegas took place in 2281. And in New Vegas, the player will acknowledge that Shady Sands still stands, and there is no mention of its devastation, though the player does not get a chance to visit it. Bethesda designer Emil Pagliaro tried to assure fans on Twitter that New Vegas is still part of the franchise canon, and claimed that he is also very protective of the series' lore, and even demonstrated this with a timeline of the Fallout series. This timeline showed that both New Vegas and the TV show are part of this timeline, and that even Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel is considered canon. However, the timeline did little to address the inconsistencies with the blackboard scene from episode 6. In perhaps an overreaching set of accusations from fans, some felt the retcon revealed that Bethesda held a grudge against New Vegas developers Obsidian Entertainment. New Vegas is often touted as the best Fallout game in the series, and it seemed to fans that Bethesda, whose games are often criticized for lacking polish, may have purposely tried to decanonize New Vegas with the Fallout show to spite Obsidian. These are, however, 3 possible explanations as to how this inconsistency consistency of the blackboard exists. When making the Fallout TV show, the writing staff made a simple mistake when adapting a franchise with a huge volume of existing lore that spans multiple games over multiple decades with multiple writers behind them, and merely wrote the wrong date on the blackboard in a single scene. Whoever wrote 2277 on the blackboard was simply misinformed and had to use a degree of guesswork to calculate the date that Shady Sands fell. Being a post-apocalyptic setting with poor historical record keeping, this may have simply been an approximate date. Or 3. It could have been a sly reference to the DLC expansion of New Vegas, Lonesome Road, which gives the player the option of nuking the New California Republic, who are based in Shady Sands. Though whether this ending to the DLC is considered canon or not is unknown. We think the answer is probably 1. It's probably the first one, if we're realistic, isn't it? As you may have guessed, New Vegas also includes a great deal of references to films, as is typical Fallout fashion. The challenge, Even a God King Can Bleed, from the Gunrunner's Arsenal add-on, requires the player to cripple Kaisar's head using throwing spears. This is a nod to the film 300, where Leonidas I of Sparta says that by the end of the central plot he'll prove that even a God King can bleed, doing so by striking Xerxes' cheek by throwing a spear. Many of New Vegas' Easter eggs will reveal themselves if the player has the Wild Wasteland trait. One example is that some chatter heard on the NCR emergency radio station will include a few special phrases, including
"Game over, man, game over!"
and
"They're coming out of the walls, man, they're coming out of the damn walls!"
2 phrases lifted straight from the second entry of the Alien franchise, 1986's Aliens.
Man, game over, man, it's game over! They're coming out of the walls! They're coming out of the goddamn walls!
Another reference to Aliens comes from the Kill Challenge, Nuke It from Orbit, which references the line,
I say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
Another film reference, though of a slightly different ilk, comes from Mr. New Vegas when he ends a certain news segment while the player has the Wild Wastelands trait, with the line,
Stay classy, New Vegas.
This references Ron Burgundy's catchphrase in Anchorman with his sign-off,
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
An additional Wild Wasteland reference occurs when Dean Domino takes out his first ghost person, which causes him to state that he's not dead, it's a trick, get an axe. A wink and a nod to 1992's entry of the Evil Dead series, Army of Darkness.
It's a trick. Get an axe.
Rodents of an unusually large size can be found in various places with the trait active. These rodents are a reference to the film The Princess Bride, in which Wesley states that he doesn't believe rodents of such a size exist, just before he is immediately attacked by one.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
These rodents are part of a challenge titled I Am Not Left-Handed, a nod to the character Inigo Montoya from the movie, who informs the man in black that he isn't left-handed during their sword fight.
Because I know something you don't know. And what is that? I am not left-handed.
Benefit or a Hazard, one of the game's Gunrunner's Arsenal challenges, tasks the player with killing 15 robot targets using the 5.56 pistol or its variant, That Gun. That Gun makes reference to the 1982 science fiction film Blade Runner in several ways. The Arsenal challenge is taken directly from a quote by the film's protagonist, Rick Deckard, in which he says,
Replicants are like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard.
Referring to the film's central plot of synthetic humans known as replicants. The task of killing robots is quite plainly in reference to this too, with Deckard's mission in the film being to eliminate 4 rogue replicants. The gun needed to complete the challenge is a recreation of the 223 pistol as featured in the original Fallout and Fallout 2, and while this can be seen as a reference to earlier Fallout games, the gun's primary design in those games was visually based on the same prop gun used as Deckard's primary sidearm in Blade Runner. Another homage to an age-old classic film is simply in the achievement Love the Bomb, making reference to the film Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. In a heavily booby-trapped house located in Nipton, situated across the street from the general store, protected by a wall of sandbags around its door, a note can be found about vital essence. This note contains a rant about vital essence, written with a paranoid tone similar to that of General Jack D. Ripper's obsession with precious bodily fluids in Dr. Strangelove.
And the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
To further drive home allusions to Strangelove, the logo of the Atomic Wrangler references the film's most famous scene, in which Major TJK King Kong rides a nuclear bomb like a rodeo cowboy as it falls through the sky. If the player has the Wild Wasteland trait while at Cottonwood Grove, one of the buildings will be tagged with graffiti saying "Romans go home" in Latin. This is a reference to Monty Python's The Life of Brian, but it isn't the only nod to Python in the game. In the basement of one of the churches located in Camp Searchlight, it's possible to find 3 holy frag grenades, referencing Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and its famous holy hand grenade. Another reference to the Holy Grail appears in the quest They Went That-A-Way. When talking to Jessup, he'll be shocked that the player survived, allowing them to respond with "I got better." This phrase, and the context of its use, is just one of many running gags within the film.
I got better.
Another Wild Wasteland Easter egg can be found outside of Cerulean Robotics. Players may find themselves confronted by Maud's Muggers, a gang of elderly thugs. These biddies are a nod to another Python gag, specifically the skit Hell's Grannies from Monty Python's Flying Circus. The Gunrunner's Arsenal challenge, for which the player must cripple the right arm of 5 enemies using a shotgun, is a reference to the scene in the 1987 science fiction film RoboCop, in which the villain of the movie, Clarence Boddicker, shoots off a number of Alex Murphy's body parts while imitating a computer targeting system. Before shooting off his hand. There's of course a few references to the classic Star Wars series in Fallout. Wild Wasteland allows the player to encounter a unique interaction in Nipton. When heading east from the Nipton Town Hall, the player can find a burning house with the skeletal remains of characters called Owen and Beru. This is a nod to Luke Skywalker's adopted uncle and aunt, who met a similar fate in Star Wars A New Hope. The challenge, "and no disintegrations," is a play on one of Darth Vader's lines in The Empire Strikes Back. Vader tells Boba Fett that no disintegrations are to take place on his mission to hunt the crew of the Millennium Falcon.
You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegrations.
A more subtle reference is present in the quest You'll Know When It Happens. After the Legion assassin is eliminated at the top of the guard tower, Ranger Grant asks for a report on what happened over the radio. One dialogue option given to the player is to respond, "Everything's fine up here, thank you. How are you?" This echoes a line from A New Hope when Han Solo and Luke Skywalker rescue Princess Leia from the Death Star.
But everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
During the quest Ant Misbehavin', when asked by Loyal about what frequency a sonic emitter would need to kill the mutant ants, if the player lacks sufficient science skill, they can suggest to turn it up to 11. This is of course a reference to the iconic line from This Is Spinal Tap, where the guitarist shows the documentarians his custom guitar amps, explaining that they're louder because they can go up to 11.
These go to 11.
The Wizard of Oz gets a couple of nods too. In Boulder City, when the player yet again encounters Victor, if they choose the dialogue option, "I don't like being followed," Victor will say, Now, it's not my fault that Dorothy and the Tin Man happen to be on the same yellow striped road, is it?" Another reference appears in the Old World Blues add-on. Dr. Mobius refers to a group of murderers who were looking for a heart, a brain, and courage, or a spine, which they had all along. This references the cast of The Wizard of Oz. Moving on to the less than overwhelmingly positive sequel, Fallout 4. Some fans of the franchise were upset with the game generally, but one player was upset for an almost complete opposite reason. So upset, in fact, that they felt it necessary to take legal action. In December of 2015, a 28-year-old Russian man took the drastic measure of suing Bethesda Softworks, not because he was upset that the game wasn't up to his expectations, but rather because it resulted in a quote, life-ruining experience. He made the claim that he had become so addicted to the game that he lost both his job and wife. He would skip work, ignore friends, and even his own relationship, resulting in his wife making the decision to leave him. In a statement, he said that had he known the game would be so addictive, he would have approached playing it with more caution. I would not have bought it, or I would have left it until I was on holiday or until the New Year's holidays. The ridiculousness of this lawsuit is more than clear, considering the man decided to take this action after playing the game for around 3 weeks, attempting the massive undertaking to seek out 500,000 rubles in compensation, around $7,000 at the time. In Fallout 4, the diner located in General Atomic's Galleria is run by 2 General Atomic robots, who make it clear to the player that they are there to serve them. When speaking with these robots and questioning how it is they intend to serve you, or by telling them that you simply aren't hungry, they will immediately begin to attack the player. This entire exchange is actually a reference to the Twilight Zone, specifically the episode To Serve Man, an episode that tells the story of a strange alien race who seem to exist solely to aid mankind, but are actually revealed to be carrying a book called To Serve Man, a cookbook on how to appropriately cook and serve human beings as a dish. The Fat Man is an iconic weapon in the Fallout series, known for causing immense explosive damage. Within Fallout 4, however, each time the players fire a mini nuke with their Fat Man, there is a small chance that the bomb will actually be a dud. While it won't result in a nuclear explosion the player may have hoped for, it can still deal physical damage to foes, like any other typical heavy projectile in the game. We already mentioned that there's Morse code hidden throughout Fallout 3, as well as its mention in passing in a terminal entry in Vault 19 in Fallout New Vegas. Fallout 4 brought back the hidden messages of Fallout 3 with Morse code. However, with coded messages being decoded off ham radios by an agent at the railroad headquarters. The decoded message reads, "Capital Wasteland available for delivery. Package lost, Raiders repeat Raiders. Gen 1S salvage team at Baseball Tango 8. Dead Drop Disco needs a pickup urgent." Let's move on to Fallout 76, because it's a Fallout game that exists. 76 had one particular highlight, and while the game didn't exactly launch as the well-executed multiplayer Fallout romp fans desired, that highlight was still incredibly enjoyable. We're talking about the game's cover of Take Me Home Country Roads. The track, while featured in the game, also received a 7-inch vinyl pressing that was distributed exclusively within Australia. The record was included with the December 2018 issue of Stack magazine, available from retailer JB Hi-Fi. Vitus Varnus, long-term Australian fan of the channel, actually sent us several copies of this record at release, and it's great. Thanks again, Vitus, you're a real one. Now, the Morse code from Fallout 3 and 4 returned once more for 76, with more hidden messages to be found. During a random encounter, a responder iBot can be found floating around transmitting 2 messages on a loop repeatedly. Once decoded, the message reads, "Reconnaissance of designated location recommended standby to receive coordinates," and "Tactical assessment possible situation developing." Now that you have a more intimate knowledge of the Fallout games, let's move on to the recently released and much beloved Amazon series. This is a reminder that this section will contain spoilers for the TV series. In 2019, Todd Howard and Jonathan Nolan, brother and collaborator of acclaimed director Christopher Nolan, initiated talks about adapting the Fallout franchise for TV. Both individuals shared a profound appreciation for the immersive world and narrative depth of the games. These initial conversations laid the groundwork for what would become a collaborative effort to bring the post-apocalyptic universe of Fallout to television screens. Jonathan Nolan's admiration for the series, Fallout 3 in particular, fueled his enthusiasm for this project. As with many fans of the games, he was drawn in by the rich lore, complex characters, and morally ambiguous storytelling that defines the franchise. Todd Howard had previously rejected several offers to adapt Bethesda's games for TV. However, the prospect of collaborating with Jonathan Nolan, renowned for his work on hit shows like Person of Interest and Westworld, proved to be an enticing opportunity. With Amazon on board, the project gained momentum, attracting top talent and experienced industry professionals to key roles. The casting process began with Walter Goggins and Ella Purnell among the first to join the ensemble cast. Each casting decision was carefully considered, as the creative team sought to assemble a diverse and talented cast capable of bringing the characters of Fallout to life with authenticity and depth. As production ramped up, the creative team faced various challenges, from securing filming locations to designing costumes and props that captured the aesthetic of the Fallout universe. Every detail was meticulously planned and executed to ensure that the series remained faithful to the source material while offering a fresh and immersive viewing experience. Filming commenced in mid-2022, spanning multiple locations across the United States, including New York, Utah, and California, as well as places further afield like the Skeleton Coast of Namibia, specifically the ghost town of Kolmanskop. These diverse landscapes provided the perfect backdrop for the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout, with each location carefully selected to evoke the desolate beauty and haunting atmosphere of the games. In fact, according to production designer for the show, Howard Cummings, it was on a location scout in Kolmanskop that it was settled the show would take place in California.
Waves crashing on the ground, and the story actually wasn't written for LA in the beginning. We were standing there and he goes, and I said, wow, it's too bad we can't really look at the water. It's fantastic. And he goes, but what if we can?
Throughout production, the creative team remained committed to honoring the legacy of Fallout while pushing the boundaries of visual storytelling. From the sprawling wastelands to the iconic Vault-Tec vaults, every aspect of the series was crafted with care and attention to detail, resulting in a visually stunning and emotionally resonant viewing experience. As the premiere date drew near, anticipation reached a fever pitch, with fans eagerly awaiting the opportunity to explore the world of Fallout in a new and exciting way. Finally, on April 10, 2024, Fallout made its long-awaited debut on Amazon Prime Video. The premiere was met with widespread acclaim, and critics and audiences praising the show for its compelling storytelling, stunning visuals, and memorable performances. While generally new viewers and longtime fans alike were happy with the series, Chris Avallone was far more critical of the show. On his blog, Chris explained that while he felt the show was entertaining to watch and specifically went out of his way to congratulate Todd Howard and the rest of the crew for successfully getting a Fallout show made, he expressed that the show felt uneven and compared it more to the feeling of Fallout 4 or 76 games, which he himself is critical of and actively avoids. He was also critical of the overall narrative of the series' writing. On craftsmanship, is Fallout a good, thoughtful, well-paced series whose plot respects its own internal lore, its own dramatic payoffs, and uses foreshadowing effectively, cinematically, and narratively? Nope. He also goes on to explain that to him, the Fallout games were never about the evils of capitalism, and that he groaned upon finding out that Vault-Tec dropped the first nuke, and that their entire conspiracy was purely about greed in this retcon canon. Quote, "While there might be stories told by individuals and quests in Fallout that are anti-capitalism, to say that its roots are anti-capitalist, and Fallout was originally envisioned as anti-capitalist, or an anti-capitalist statement is 100% wrong. It's fine if modern Fallout 3, 4, 76 and the TV series wants to embrace that theme as one of its pillars, but my point is that was not the original intention behind Fallout." He was also unsatisfied with several other retcons, like the unnamed serum which apparently turns people into ghouls and heals their injuries, as well as the idea of ghouls having to take drugs to prevent going feral. If you want to read his entire 2-part blog about the series, the link is in the description. Josh Sawyer, director of Fallout New Vegas, felt differently, however. In an interview with Rock Paper Shotgun, he shared his opinions that he doesn't care what the show does with the lore, at least as far as New Vegas is concerned. This might sound weird, but whatever happens with it, I don't care. My attitude towards properties that I work on, and even characters that I create, is that I don't own any of this stuff. It was never mine, and the thing that I made is what I made. With all that being said, there are still a few fun bits of trivia from the series referencing the games. In the final episode, when Lucy tells her father to enter the code for Moldova, the code he inputs is 101097, the release date of the original Fallout game, the 10th of October 1997. The ghoul names the dog in the show Dogmeat, continuing the running naming convention of the video game series. If you text the number for Vault-Tec that appears on screen in the show, 21325-VAULT, you will receive a response offering promotional material and updates for Vault Tech. However, if you call this number, all that can be heard is what sounds like a man wailing down the telephone. In the flashbacks to the ghoul's old life on set, some men in Centurion costumes can be seen walking across the studio lot. This could be a nod and potentially foreshadowing of Caesar's Legion that featured heavily in Fallout New Vegas.
Great games are played, not made. This is a driving philosophy for Todd Howard, game director and executive producer at Bethesda Game Studios. The phrase has since become the Bethesda mantra, coined during the development of the Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind, their first major title led by Howard. Since then, under Howard's leadership, the company has risen from a developer struggling to survive to one of the fastest-growing powerhouse publishers in the entire industry. This is the story of how Todd Howard grew from a young college student unable to get a job as a designer to an experienced developer shepherding the creation of some of the biggest RPGs ever released. Todd Howard was born in 1971 in the small Pennsylvania suburb of Lower Macungie Township. He developed an interest in technology and video games at a young age, convincing his parents to buy him an Apple II computer. Howard cites wizardry as the title that first inspired him to make games, and Ultima 3 as his biggest influence. He also taught himself how to program and began writing his own crude games when he was very young. Origin Systems, the company behind the Ultima games, quickly became Howard's favorite developer because he felt that they didn't just make games, they crafted entire worlds that the player could travel to. In particular, he respected the way Origin developed Ultimas 3 through 7, as they completely overhauled their development tools and systems with each new title, truly improving upon their work. This was a philosophy that would come to guide Howard's own projects. Howard attended the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, and though he desired to focus on game development, he majored in finance. Howard later explained that he took this subject as it seemed like, quote, the easiest way through school. Despite this, Howard would often go to the campus's computer labs after class and install Wing Commander on one of their desktops so that he could play. Several times the workstation where he'd installed Wing Commander had already been taken, and he eventually decided that it was too time-consuming to install the game on a new computer every day. Howard used this as an excuse to convince his parents to buy him his own computer, telling them that it would help his workflow. At some point, Howard acquired a copy of Wayne Gretzky Hockey 3, developed by Bethesda Games. After looking at the company's address on the box, he realized that their offices were along the commute home from his college for the holidays. On a whim, while still attending school, Howard applied to work at the company, only to be declined and told to apply again once he'd graduated. And after completing his education, Howard tried once more, but was again declined. It wasn't until 1994 that Bethesda would officially hire Todd Howard. He began his work for Bethesda right after the Elder Scrolls Arena was released. Some cite his first task for the company as converting the game from MS-DOS to CD disk. This would be his first work on the series that would earn him his fame and acclaim in the industry. The first project Howard worked on at Bethesda in a real capacity was 1995's Terminator Future Shock, a first-person shooter based in the universe of the Terminator franchise. This title was one of the first to use fully texture-mapped three-dimensional environments. It also pioneered the use of mouse-based camera controls months before Quake popularized the idea. Future Shock wouldn't be Howard's only brush with the Terminator franchise. His next work was as a designer on 1996's Terminator Skynet. Though it was originally conceived as just an expansion pack for Future Shock, Skynet slowly grew larger and larger before becoming its own game. On August 31st, 1996, Bethesda released their sequel to Arena, titled The Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, which featured a massive open world. Bethesda themselves boast that it was roughly the size of Great Britain, around 230,000 square kilometers. In reality, it was actually closer to 161,000 square kilometers, slightly smaller but no less impressive. Thousands of villages dot the landscape of Daggerfall, populated by literally hundreds of thousands of NPCs. With so much content, there was no way the designers could craft it all by hand, so parts of Daggerfall's world were randomly generated, including much of its wilderness and several building interiors. In retrospect, it would seem obvious that this would take a toll on the game, with some critics describing the world and characters within it as monotonous. Criticism that Bethesda, and perhaps Howard himself, would take to heart. In 1998, Howard was given his first opportunity to lead a project at Bethesda. Inspired by titles like Tomb Raider and Prince of Persia, the company sought to create a series of action-adventure games under the Elder Scrolls Adventures banner, and the first title in this planned franchise was known as Redguard. A very different approach to the Elder Scrolls universe. Redguard was a third-person action RPG with linear progression rather than a first-person RPG with an explorable open world. Redguard also featured a main character with a set name and race, Cyrus the Restless, instead of letting the player create their own character. While Redguard was a solid game that found decent commercial success, it was a symptom of a much larger problem at Bethesda. The company went through some troubled times during the late 90s after Daggerfall's release. Between projects like Redguard, Battle Spire, and the cancelled 10th Planet, the studio spread itself too thin and was in danger of going out of business. Things were looking quite bleak until the year 2000 when Bethesda was acquired by ZeniMax Media, a move that Howard described as giving us kind of a new lease on life, and the company moved forward with a new installment in the Elder Scrolls franchise. Though he was in charge of this project and the entire future of Bethesda potentially rested on his shoulders, Howard wasn't afraid and poured his all into this game. He explained, "The studio had gotten that small and I was in charge of Morrowind, but by that time, once you get to that point, there was an element of no fear. What's the worst that could happen? We could go out of business. Well, let's go all in. This is the game. Let's put all our chips on the table. This is the game people want from us. This is the game we want to do." The developers scrapped the engine they had used in previous titles and made a completely new one powered by Microsoft's Direct3D software. Remembering the criticisms of Daggerfall and taking cues from his experience with Redguard, Howard and his team decided to craft almost everything in Morrowind by hand instead of randomly generating assets. To accomplish this, Bethesda tripled its staff and spent the entirety of Morrowind's first year of development creating the Elder Scrolls Construction Kit, a file system that allowed designers to tweak and rebalance aspects of the title quickly and on a small scale instead of broad, inaccurate strokes. Howard would affectionately refer to it as a role-playing operating system. The construction set shipped with Morrowind and spawned an active modding community, one that remains with Bethesda's titles to this day. By the end of development, Howard and his staff put in close to 100 man-years to create Morrowind, which was released on the PC on May 1st, 2002, and ported to the Xbox on June 6th, 2002. The game was a massive success, with critics praising the size and scope of its world and the amount of detail Bethesda was able to cram in it. The title sold more than 4 million copies in its lifetime and remains a massively important game for the studio, so much so that bits of its code remain in everything Bethesda Game Studios makes to this day, for better and for worse. After Morrowind's success, Howard and his team at Bethesda did not rest and instead looked to the future. In 2002, they split their team, with artists and designers going to work on Morrowind's expansions, Tribunal and Blood Moon, and programmers beginning work on their next major title, The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. While Morrowind's lead designer Ken Ralston oversaw the development team, Howard himself was promoted to executive producer. Bethesda took their time with this game, giving it a 4-year development cycle. Howard explained that they did this so Oblivion could be a reinvention of Morrowind and stand on its own. Harkening back to his influences with Ultima, Howard believed that this approach would capture much of what made Bethesda's past titles so exciting in the first place. While there were fewer NPCs and quests, in Oblivion greater care was put into each of their design and writing. Quests would have multiple branching paths, and characters would have more unique personalities. For the main quest, the team decided against having the player be a chosen one, as they'd been in their earlier games. Instead, they believed it would be more interesting to have the player character track down and help the chosen one. Though there was quite a bit of voice acting in Morrowind, Oblivion was fully voiced and featured several prominent actors, including Patrick Stewart, Sean Bean, and Terrence Stamp. Use of mainstream actors would become the norm in Bethesda's following titles. Just as they'd done with Morrowind, Bethesda decided to throw out their current technology and crafted a new engine for Oblivion. The final product was a mixture of in-house tech and Numerical Designs' Gamebryo engine. Other new technology was also incorporated into the game, including various physics engines, facial animation and lip-syncing tech, and environmental development tools like the foliage-creating speed tree. A Radiant AI system was also implemented, which made NPC behavior more dynamic. All of these changes paid off, as Oblivion received universal acclaim from critics, resting at a monumental 94 out of 100 on Metacritic. By November of 2011, the title had sold over 3.5 million copies. While Oblivion was a success and the future was looking bright for Howard and his team at Bethesda, elsewhere in the industry, things weren't as cheerful. For years, Black Isle Studios and Interplay Entertainment's Fallout 3, then codenamed Van Buren, languished in development hell. And in 2004, the struggling Interplay struck a deal with Bethesda to allow their developers to produce and publish several Fallout games. Bethesda eventually obtained the Fallout license permanently. While Howard and his team started pre-production on Fallout 3 in 2004, principal development did not begin until Oblivion was released in 2006. For this new title, Howard once again stepped into the role of producer while simultaneously acting as director. The title was similar in scope to Oblivion, but offered a unique challenge for Howard and his team, as its post-apocalyptic capital wasteland was a very different setting from the familiar Tamriel. Regardless, Bethesda approached Fallout 3 the same way they'd approached Morrowind and Oblivion, allowing their ideas for its world to grow organically. Because the Fallout universe was so thick with its own lore, a solid foundation had already been built, calming fears amongst some in the development team that Fallout 3 wouldn't have its own tone. Upon its release, Fallout 3 was an even bigger hit than Oblivion, selling 4.7 million copies by the end of 2008. It averaged a 91 out of 100 on Metacritic, and because of the tremendous success of Fallout 3, Bethesda's parent company decided that a sequel should be fast-tracked. However, instead of handing the project to Howard and his team, the reins were instead given to Obsidian Entertainment, a developer formed by several former Fallout 2 developers from Black Isle Studios. This decision was made for good reason, as Howard and Bethesda Game Studios wanted to revisit the world of Tamriel. Plans for the next Elder Scrolls game were put in place after Oblivion's release in 2006, but again, development did not hit full steam until Fallout 3's release in 2008. With this new title, Howard yearned to return to the style of Morrowind. He wanted players to be able to explore a distinct and unique culture, as opposed to the classic Tolkien-inspired high fantasy setting in Oblivion's Cyrodiil. He also wished for the player's race to have a larger impact on gameplay. To accomplish this, Skyrim, the home of the proud but often xenophobic Nords, was chosen. Just like with Oblivion and Morrowind, a new engine was developed for Skyrim, built to further the possibilities of Gamebryo. This new toolset, called the Creation Engine, was also built with a creation kit that allowed developers to tweak content on a small scale. Similar to the Elder Scrolls construction set, it also allowed for modders to easily craft their ideas and put them into the game, a practice that was now a staple for Bethesda's releases. Skyrim was released on November 11, 2011 to near universal acclaim. It furthered the success of both Fallout 3 and Oblivion, hitting true mainstream appeal and selling over 20 million copies as of June 2013. A huge contributor to Skyrim's achievements may have been Howard's philosophy towards game design. He believes that a developer could create a huge design document detailing exactly what a game was going to do, but designers often get too attached to these ideas. Instead, Howard suggests that developers should just put ideas into their game and see what works, without feeling afraid to kill features that simply don't. An example of one such feature in Skyrim was the title's dragons. They began as a single page in the Skyrim design document, describing how encounters with the beasts should feel. The idea grew and became an integral part of the experience. Howard maintains that features grown naturally like this are the best parts of their games. Whenever a new game from Bethesda is released, many people ask for the company to simply add more content. While doing this is important, Howard believes his team should instead focus on combining superfluous ideas and systems to make what the player does, who they are, and what they do more meaningful. Whether or not this has always been beneficial is up for debate, but it's clear that if there's any flaw with Howard and his team's philosophies on creating games, it's that they are too ambitious. For better and for worse, that is respectable in its own right. This was evident with the studio's latest release, Fallout 4, which sacrificed many of its predecessors' deep role-playing mechanics for a far more streamlined approach to game design, while simultaneously adding town-building mechanics and a fully voiced player character. Bethesda also worked with Microsoft to bring user-created mods to their home console, with Sony following suit with a much more stripped-down version of the feature. Fallout 4 has been the company's biggest launch yet, shipping more than 12 million copies in just a single day. Howard's leadership has treated his company well, earning nearly all of their games multiple Game of the Year awards, and allowing Bethesda to expand and bring more talented studios into their fold, including the celebrated id Software and Dishonored developer Arcane Studios. Much of the company's success has been attributed to Howard's leadership on their flagship RPGs, which has also earned him personal acclaim. In 2012, he was named Best Game Director by the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, one of the highest awards in the industry. And in 2014, he received the Laura of Honor, a Lifetime Achievement Award from the German Game Awards. Finally, in 2017, the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences inducted Howard as the 22nd member of their Hall of Fame. Todd Howard is a man that started as an excited gamer eager to work in the industry he loved, but grew into a passionate leader responsible for some of the most celebrated RPGs of the modern age. Hopefully, his story is far from over.
Did you know? The audio designers for the 2016 reboot of Doom went to insane lengths while crafting the sounds of the game. The effect for the glory kill of the Mancubus was made by slathering a steak with honey, stuffing it into a vuvuzela, and then blowing it into a vat of cold soup. And the theme music from the main menu features the sound of a chainsaw run through a synthesizer as the lead instrument. The heavy and aggressive synth sounds used throughout the Doom soundtrack come from a rare Soviet-era synthesizer called a Apollovox. Doom composer Mick Gordon also ran audio through vast arrays of old guitar pedals, mixers, and other analog recording equipment, giving the music a gritty and industrial sound. Many songs from the Doom reboot also reference previous games in the series. The track Ties That Bind has a musical allusion to the Imps song from the original Doom. To make the reference authentic, Mick Gordon tracked down an old Sound Blaster PC card to sample the exact MIDI sounds from the original game. Doom 3's music is also referenced in the reboot soundtrack. The track Harbinger uses a similar guitar riff as the main theme of Doom 3. The most bizarre secrets within Doom 2016's soundtrack can only be found by running the music through a visual spectrograph. The opening to a track known as Cyber Demon contains satanic imagery depicting pentagrams and the number 666. There's another song with hidden spectrographic visuals. The ending to the song Skull Hacker depicts the sprite of John Romero's head on a spike from Doom 2. The theme for the evil scientist Olivia Pierce was inspired by the classic Doom track Suspense. It was one of Mick Gordon's favorite songs from the original Doom, and he felt the dark tone captured her evil characteristics. Olivia Pierce was modeled after the actress Tilda Swinton, and was specifically influenced by her role as Karen Crowder in the 2007 film Michael Clayton. According to creative director Hugo Martin, the film's style of indirect storytelling was also an influence for Doom 2016. While developing the narrative of the game, lead designers Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton had long discussions breaking down films and trying to find what made them great. Another movie they found inspiration from was the 1991 action film The Last Boy Scout. Hugo Martin explained in an interview with NoClip that it was one of his favorite movies and he loved its self-aware humor. After several failed attempts at writing a serious story for a discontinued Doom 4 project, the team felt that Last Boy Scout's self-aware tone was a better fit for Doom. The opening sequence of Doom was inspired by the surgery scene from RoboCop. The team studied the scene closely and wanted to emulate the moments that showed the audience how powerful RoboCop is going to be. id Software designed a few very different opening cinematics before settling on a final version. Some early versions of the opening featured drawn-out tutorials and a segment where Olivia paced, lecturing the Doom Marine as he was strapped to a chair. The team found that these story elements interrupted the flow of gameplay and didn't set the right tone. This frustration manifested in the story segment where the Doom Marine throws a screen as a mission brief plays. It was deliberately added as a statement on the importance of narrative in the fast action game. Hugo Martin stated, "We're gonna set the tone for the whole game. It's an action-first game. The beginning has to be action. We know this is ridiculous. You know this is ridiculous. Good. Can we just shake hands on this and have fun?" Including the scrapped concepts for Doom 4, Doom 2016 was technically in development for 8 years. One of the developers even had 4 children in the time it took to release the game. When the founder of id Software, John Carmack, left the company, it was enormously disruptive. The decision caused a legal battle between Carmack and id Software's parent company, ZeniMax. The reason for the split came from creative differences. Carmack wanted to focus more effort on the then unproven virtual reality systems, but ZeniMax wouldn't allow Carmack to work on VR projects while under contract. So when the contract expired, Carmack decided not to renew and went to work on the Oculus Rift as technology chief. id Software underwent a complete reshuffling of talent and brought in new hires for leading roles. After rebooting the project into what it's known as today, the developers came up with a concept called the DNA of Doom. Getting away from the Doom 4 premise, the game was to return to its roots, with no scripted events, no cover, no reloading, and movement as a defense. Level designer Jason O'Connell was a huge Doom fan growing up and had the original game running when he would design levels. id Software built the game around the concept of push-forward combat. The idea was inspired by the glory kill system and how it incentivizes players to keep moving with health and ammo. Hugo Martin compared the gameplay style to Bloodborne, which was popular around the id Software office when it came out. The game's finalized story was one of the last pieces to fall into place. When asked how far along in development the story was finished, Hugo Martin refused to answer, stating, "It would make us sound irresponsible if I told you how much time was left." Doom 2016 has a series of secrets and Easter eggs that reference past id Software and Bethesda games. The very first level has a reference to Fallout, with a Vault-Tec logo in the lower left corner of a doorway. A reference to Commander Keen can be found in Hell, where a small cave contains a skull on a stake, wearing Keen's signature yellow helmet. The Dopefish from Commander Keen Goodbye Galaxy can also be found in the logo of Cup Ramen, scattered about on computer desks on the Mars base. An Easter egg referencing Skyrim can also be found in a secluded cave in Hell. The cave contains a secret lever and a corpse wearing the iconic iron helmet from Skyrim with an arrow sticking out of its knee. The Super Turbo Turkey Puncher 3 arcade machine from Doom 3 makes a return in the Doom reboot, located on the Mars base behind a stack of large cargo boxes. The reboot contains tons of references to the original 1993 Doom, but the most interesting of all is part of a death animation. If the player is destroyed by an explosion in the secret throwback areas, the pixelated face of Doom Guy is clearly visible behind the visor.
Did you know? Production of Doom Eternal began immediately after Doom 2016 shipped. As proud as id Software was of Doom 2016, they wanted to use what they learned from 2016's tumultuous development to make a game that didn't just meet fans' expectations, but rather exceed them. To do this, id closely examined Doom 2016's reception among critics and fans. Doom Eternal director Hugo Martin personally scoured the internet, reading and watching everything from reviews, forum discussions, to streams of Doom 2016 for feedback. A major criticism Martin noticed, and one that he quickly came to agree with, was Doom 2016's repetitiveness. According to executive producer Marty Stratton, this was especially apparent in the game's latter half, and even made some players outright quit. Its team looked at several ways to combat this. While they knew that players loved the combat arenas in Doom 2016, they found the level design in between battles to be lacking. And so it gave players new abilities, particularly in regards to traversing levels, to add more variety. Martin confessed, Doom 2016 was a one-trick pony. It didn't have much to offer besides skate parks and arena fights. Its combat was world-class, but everything else in the game wasn't necessarily up to the level of the combat. Every aspect of Doom Eternal had to get better. These new mechanics went through a series of testing and polishing, usually many times over until they felt right. For instance, initially the meat hook grabbed enemies and pulled them towards the player. However, this meant that the players had to wait in place as the enemy was reeled over to them. Id quickly realized that it didn't fit the lightning fast pacing of Eternal, and redesigned the hook to pull the player over to enemies instead. This not only sped up combat, but it also gave players the opportunity to use enemies as a means to traversing the levels. After making this change, some of the developers wanted the meat hook to be able to attach to any surface rather than just demons. However, others disagreed, insisting that this would ruin abilities such as the double jump or dash. The staff debated until the heads at id Software made the final call. Stratton reasoned, from a "that sounds fun" perspective, yeah, we should. We should allow the meat hook to grapple anything. But the fact that the meat hook only latches onto demons and pulls you across the world, that narrowing of the item makes it clear to the player's mind how they can use it. Being able to get into a situation like this with our designers saying, should we be able to grapple anywhere? And the answer being no, and some people saying, okay, I don't agree, but let's make this awesome, makes everything easier and our decisions to make the game tighter as a result. id also realized that most of the enemies in Doom 2016 could easily be beat with the super shotgun. This led to many players relying on the super shotgun over other weapons, making Doom 2016 seem a little more repetitive. And as a result, the team examined every single weapon in Doom Eternal and rebalanced them to ensure that no weapon would be rendered completely obsolete. It also restricted the maximum ammo players could hold for each weapon, forcing them to use more of their arsenal rather than sitting on a single weapon. Doom Eternal's enemy AI was also given a boost, with demons now being able to defend against players blindly rushing them head on. During Doom Eternal's development, the team also replayed the original Doom 1 and 2, and the often overlooked Doom 64. While each of these classic games inspired Doom Eternal, Doom 64 held a special place in Martin's heart. Not only was Doom 64 the first Doom game he ever owned, he also found its tricky level design especially influential while creating the levels for Eternal. Martin told IGN, walking down a hallway in Doom 64, you never knew what the level was going to throw at you. More so than the original Doom. Knowing that the level is keeping the players on their toes was actually something we really wanted to get into Doom Eternal. In fact, Doom Eternal directly references Doom 64 with the Unmaker super weapon from the N64 classic. Meanwhile, Night Dive Studios released an updated port of Doom 64 alongside Doom Eternal. Among a number of improvements, this port also adds a brand new level which ties into Doom Eternal's lore. Following this, id Software abandoned the strict sense of realism they strived for with Doom 2016, and instead looked towards the colorful Nintendo games and the box art of the He-Man toy line for inspiration. This shift in tone changed everything from the game's overall art style to the vibrantly color-coded ammo types, the inclusion of 1-ups, the over-the-top executions, and more. Although id Software believed Doom 2016 could be more immersive if it felt realistic, Martin came to disagree with this view, especially considering the art styles of both Doom 1 and 2. To Martin, a game is immersive as long as its tone remains consistent. He explained, in other games, they're all about creating this cinematic and immersive experience, and they don't want to break reality too much during your experience. I think that's the strength of those games, but I don't think that's the strength of Doom, and it's not something we try to do. Another common complaint of Doom 2016 was its multiplayer mode, largely developed by Certain Affinity, which some felt was too disconnected from the single-player experience. In response, it designed Doom Eternal's multiplayer from the ground up, in-house, alongside the single-player content. The team also experimented with new ways players could battle against each other, such as the asymmetrical 2v1 battles and the Dark Souls-like invasion mode. Surprisingly, it decided against having a traditional deathmatch mode in Eternal, which has been a staple in the series, if not the entire FPS genre since the original Doom in 1993. According to Bethesda's Global Senior Vice President Pete Hines, the developers wanted to make sure that there was a high level of consistency between single-player and multiplayer. Hines told Shack News, "We wanted it to feel like you're all playing the same game. That's as opposed to, I'm a badass demon slayer in single player, but when I go to multiplayer, there are no demons and it's just deathmatch. We don't want to include deathmatch just for the sake of doing it. We want to make sure that we're doing stuff that's interesting and that resonates." Unfortunately, this emphasis on revamping Eternal's multiplayer modes in-house took far more time and resources, causing Doom 2016's Snap Map mode to be left on the cutting room floor. Nevertheless, it prioritized making new content in Eternal, rather than ensuring every feature in Doom 2016 made a return. For the game's soundtrack, Mick Gordon composed music for the game in large chunks of up to half an hour per song, with each chunk being able to flow into another naturally. This was done so that it could seamlessly fade into the chunk of music that seemed most relevant to what the player was doing. For example, weaker enemies have their own song that reflects how those enemies are entry-level foes. This can then seamlessly transition into a more intense version of the song at a moment's notice if a bigger demon shows up. Gordon wrote multiple endings for each song to allow for even more variety as well. In theory, this system ensures that no two players can even hear the same exact soundtrack, as the game stitches the score together piece by piece to reflect each player's unique experience. The only issue was that Doom Eternal's music can't simply be ripped out of the game and placed in an album for fans to enjoy. Instead, Gordon had to edit together complete versions of every song as he sees fit before the official soundtrack can be released. Interestingly, although Doom Eternal's metal-inspired score might already seem intense, it was actually going to be much faster. After giving a talk on Doom 2016's score at GDC 2017, Gordon met with id Software to discuss Doom Eternal's soundtrack. Gordon was asked to make Eternal's soundtrack bigger, badder, louder, and more in the player's face. He swiftly wrote the first piece of music for Eternal at blazing speed of 264 beats per minute. However, the song was quickly abandoned after id tested it out in an early build of the game. Gordon explained, when you're trying to concentrate on what's going on and make really clear, calculated, careful decisions, if you've got like 264 beats per minute double kick drums in your ears, it just pisses you off. But not in a good way. You actually hate the music. You hate the game. It's like too aggressive. So I had to actually, believe it or not, rein things back to a style that is more groove-based and carefully considered to allow more thinking space. Gordon also came up with his own language for the soundtrack's choral sections all on his own. Wishing to pay the Doom series lore respect, Gordon took the names of the demons in the games, chopped them up into syllables, and mixed them together to create a language. Afterwards, Gordon recorded 4 hours of demonic language to use in the soundtrack. The demonic chants that the players can hear in Doom Eternal aren't just random bits of gibberish though. According to Gordon, they can be translated into phrases such as, "The Slayer will rip and tear to the death." One of the game's writers, Adam Gascoigne, even put together a dictionary translating the demon language. Just 3 days before the game's release, Bethesda confirmed the PC version of Doom Eternal would use the controversial anti-pirating DRM software Denuvo. However, 2 days later, Resetera user Dante Menethil discovered Bethesda accidentally forgot to remove the Denuvo free executable file from the folder titled Original within the files of the Bethesda launcher version of the game. An update removing this Denuvo free file from the game followed quickly afterwards, but it was too late to stop the DRM free file from circulating online. While the file still required users to connect their Bethesda account online for the game's first activation, the leak massively helped the cracking community who used it to completely break the game's DRM protection less than a week afterwards. This wasn't the first time this happened to Bethesda or id Software either. id Software's prior game, Rage 2, accidentally shipped with a Denuvo free version of the game within the files of the Bethesda launcher release. This has led some to question whether or not both instances were accidents after all, or the work of a rogue Bethesda or id Software employee leaking the files. Despite being polar opposites in tone, fan art pairing the Doomslayer alongside Animal Crossing's Isabelle began flooding both fandoms leading up to Doom Eternal's release. While many may point to Doom Eternal sharing the same release date as Animal Crossing New Horizons as the cause, the pairing goes back even further. On July 9th, 2019, Twitter user Mr. Agent Strange posted fan art commissioned from Art Shops featuring the Doomslayer teaching Isabelle how to use the super shotgun. Coincidentally, while New Horizons had already been announced for March 20th, 2020, Doom Eternal had set to be released on November 22nd, 2019, and wouldn't be officially delayed to March 2020 for months. The official Doom Twitter account took notice of this and began playing along with fans leading up to Eternal's release. Meanwhile, Martin officially commented on the phenomenon himself, saying, "I think it's awesome and it speaks to the amazing diversity we see in games today. I honestly root for other games and other studios. I'm so proud to work in the game industry, and the fact that two games that are so completely different, getting a ton of press, come out on the same day. It's an incredible time to be in development, and I'm excited to play Animal Crossing New Horizons." While fans have been making their own Animal Crossing meets Doom Eternal homages, id filled the game with plenty of references of their own. For example, in the Fortress of Doom, players can find a PC which can be used to play Doom 2 by typing in the code Flynn Taggart. This is a reference to the Doom novelizations by David Abhue, as well as Brad Weaver, where the protagonist was known as Corporal Flynn Taggart. Another reference to the series can be found on a bookshelf which includes the book titled Retconned, The Life and Times of Flynn Taggart, whose name likely refers to the novels being retconned or non-canon in the modern Doom universe. Many more references can be found within Doomslayer's library, including Why I'm So Great Part 2 by Dork Norkum, a reference to Duke Nukem, Mesa Science Monthly, predicting unforeseen consequences, an homage to the Half-Life series, and From Nopefish to Dopefish, The Dope Tale, a nod to an enemy from id Software's Commander Keen series that has become a recurring joke. This isn't the only reference to Dopefish within Doom Eternal, as the player's chainsaw is marked with a Mixum's bucktooth dope saw. The famous fish can also be found in the scales hanging around the cultist base level 2. Another id Software in-joke within Doom Eternal regards Daisy. To those who don't know, Daisy was featured in the ending of the 4th and final episode of the original Doom, Thy Flesh Consumed. The ending text directly refers to Daisy reading, "But you stepped forward and brought forth eternal damnation and suffering upon the Horde, as a true hero would in the face of something so evil. Besides, someone was going to pay for what happened to Daisy, your pet rabbit." This was followed by a picture of the Doomslayer holding Daisy's decapitated head. More recently, Daisy was referenced in Quake Champions, which reveals that the Doomslayer still carries Daisy's left hind foot on him. Not for luck, but as, quote, a reminder of innocence lost. Despite the rabbit's seemingly definitive death, she returned safe and sound in Doom Eternal, hiding in various levels of the game. Furthermore, a painting of the Doomslayer holding Daisy can be seen in his private chambers, and fans also discovered that Daisy can be found subtly hidden within the game's official box art. Director Hugo Martin included himself in one of Doom Eternal's Easter eggs as well. Within the Ark Complex level, players can visit a convenience store where a bag of jerky meat named Gulami's dried meat pieces can be found. The man on the cover of the jerky bag is none other than Martin himself. Martin wasn't the only member of the team who made it into Doom Eternal's Easter eggs either, as the entire QA team can be found within the game, listed on a monitor under the Union Aerospace Corporation's Quality Excellence winners.
Did you know? The New Order was the first Wolfenstein game to be released in Germany. German laws forbid the use of Nazi imagery in games, as they're generally considered as toys rather than art. To have the game approved, the game's developers, Machine Games, had to meticulously edit out any reference to Nazis and decide what was and wasn't okay to show. For example, the number 88 is a coded Nazi reference. H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, so 88, or HH, is a message meaning Heil Hitler. So if the number 88 were to be included coincidentally, the team had to decide whether or not to remove it. Wolfenstein: The New Order also very nearly didn't get made. After being founded in 2009 by industry veterans, Machine Games immediately began pitching projects to publishers. One of these publishers was Bethesda, who had recently gained access to id Software and all of its franchises. Although every pitch by Machine Games was shot down, Bethesda offered them an id property to work on. Machine Games' creative director Jens Mathies had gotten his start in the industry making Quake mods, so the chance to work on another id franchise was a dream come true. The company ultimately chose to work on a new entry of Wolfenstein. Machine Games was invited to meet with id Software in Texas. The team thought they'd have to pitch their own Wolfenstein concept, but it was actually the other way around. id were already confident that Machine Games would do the series justice, and wanted to pitch their id Tech 5 engine to Machine Games. Their collaboration with Bethesda proved to be fruitful, with Machine Games receiving full creative freedom and no pressure to include multiplayer. Story was considered to be an integral part of the New Order. The basic premise of the game, a world where the Nazis won World War II, proved to be a well of creativity. While the cast is full of exaggerated personalities like General Death's Head, the team wanted to portray the Nazis as humans, rather than caricatures. They were careful to make the threat and the ideology of the Nazis feel consistent and threatening. While it was tempting to make them a joke, Mathies believed it would be a missed opportunity to assume the Nazis were evil and not show the player why they were evil. He argued that games can put you on the receiving end of cruelty in a way that other media can't. The game's 1960s setting was a deliberate choice, as a lot of progressive values such as sexual liberation and human rights became a mainstream concern in the 60s. The team felt it would be interesting to pervert that by having the 60s ruled by Nazis who hold opposing values. It was important to id that series protagonist BJ remained a hero, rather than become a morally ambiguous anti-hero. The designers were sure to reveal things to both BJ and the player at the same time, so that the player and the character were both on the same page. Mathies felt this technique was effective, but oddly rare in games. One way they accomplished this was to present BJ with a horrible choice at the start of the game, so the player would come to hate antagonist Death's Head. Death's Head returns from Return to Castle Wolfenstein and the 2009 Wolfenstein. Machine Games decided to bring Death's Head back from Return to Castle Wolfenstein and the 2009 game, as it was an opportunity to flesh out the character and give fans some closure. And while only capable of saying his own name, Max Hass proved to be the most difficult character to cast. He was based on Garp, from the 1978 John Irving novel, The World According to Garp. The tone of the game was also influenced by other media. It took inspiration from two films in particular, RoboCop and Inglourious Bastards. This was because the team wanted to create fiction with rich themes and a coherent plot, while also featuring over-the-top violence. The New Order was built to be longer and more difficult than a typical shooter campaign to compensate for the lack of multiplayer. The game rejected many modern shooter mechanics such as a limited weapon pool and regenerating health. The team instead adopted a more 90s sensibility, giving the player 100 health and armor that must be replenished using pickups. However, they didn't reject modern mechanics entirely, giving BJ a more modern leaning system and allowing his health to regenerate up to 20% to give critically injured players a fighting chance. Machine Games also intended to release 2 DLC packs for the New Order, but instead released a new standalone title in 2015, Wolfenstein: The Old Blood. Development of the DLC packs for the New Order were progressing smoothly, but since their stories were set back to back, the team decided to simply combine them. Like the New Order before it, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus explores a revised history where the Nazis won World War II. As it's set in America, the team explored how the Americana of the 50s and 60s is twisted by the Nazi propaganda machine. Although the game arguably has some parallels with the current political climate, this was mostly a coincidence. Machine Games were not focused on contemporary satire and wanted to create something timeless. The game's scope for commentary was also limited by both the length of development and by the game's pulpy nature. Bethesda's marketing was less shy about referencing current events, with the company company releasing the No More Nazis gameplay trailer on September 19th. Some felt that the trailer was directly antagonizing people with right-wing political views. In response, Pete Hines, vice president of PR and marketing at Bethesda, said, "Wolfenstein has been a decidedly anti-Nazi series since the first release more than 20 years ago. We aren't going to shy away from what the game is about. We don't feel it's a reach for us to say Nazis are bad and un-American." Although BJ was originally said to be from Milwaukee, referencing the city's large Polish population in connection with World War II, his identity was changed in the New Order. BJ was instead given a southern accent and said to have grown up near Mesquite, Texas. This is actually a reference to id Software, which was founded in Mesquite in 1991. The redesign of BJ's appearance also bears a striking resemblance to German actor Till Schweiger, best known in the West for his role as Hugo Stiglitz in Inglourious Bastards. Since the game's developers already admitted to drawing inspiration from the film, it's likely their resemblance isn't a coincidence. As well as referencing real life, the New Order also has several nods to other video games. While in the car at the opening sequence of Chapter 6, it's possible to spot a reference to another id Software property. The car keys in the ignition have a Quake 3 rocket launcher keychain dangling from them. There's another reference to an id title. In Tekla's room, there's a board of chipwood with the letters IDKFA written on it. This is a cheat code from Doom 1 and 2 that gives the player full health, ammo, and armor, as well as all keys and weapons in the game. Machine Games also included a reference to publisher Bethesda. In Chapter 7, it's possible to find a large red circular vault-like door shrouded in steam. The door is labeled 101, a reference to Vault 101 from Bethesda's Fallout 3.